One drenched in sweat, the exhausted warrior tries his absolute best to stay standing. He stares grimly ahead, warning his allies that the worst is yet to come. This brutal high-level dungeon boss is right in front of them. Level 67 Sibaruma's dragon, famous for tearing challengers to shreds. The beast opens its maw wide, gathering a massive fireball to blast them. Terrified, the archmage desperately begs her companion to do something. But the defender grunts back that his heavy shield won't withstand this blast. Suddenly, the bearded fighter stops, baffled by what he sees. Just a few meters away stands a bizarre, green-skinned little monster with sharp claws. It's wearing nothing but a filthy loincloth. Meanwhile, the giant dragon attacks again. The beast is absolutely furious, yet somehow it fails to land a solid hit. That long-nosed goblin just grins cheekily, casually chewing on a juicy piece of chicken. The party is stunned. They have no idea what this pest is doing. Suddenly, a flash of blinding yellow light erupts right around the confused dragon. Agony rips through the massive beast, though it somehow manages to stay standing. It is still deadly, very deadly, but the clever, long-eared creature. He starts celebrating, jumping up and down in pure joy. He actually pulled off a total miracle. To make it even better, he waves his bony hands to show off. The stunned trio just stands there staring. Talk about an absolute shocker. This supposedly dumb goblin just dealt a fatal blow to a legendary boss. Nobody can figure out why these wild monsters are suddenly fighting each other. Right before their eyes, the dragon dissolves into thin air. Shaking with excitement, the bearded warrior points wildly toward a nearby hill. He shouts for his team to look up there immediately, and they freeze. They spot a strange, white-toothed boy sticking his tongue out and grinning. He acts like nothing happened. This dark-haired youth looks very pleased with himself. Down below, the exhausted fighters realize he was the mastermind behind it all. But in reality, this kid works a regular, exhausting day job in construction. He spends his long days hauling heavy bags, covered in sweat for pennies. Dumping heavy cement bags right where his boss demands, he survives on tiny breaks. He cherishes every single second he gets to sit down and catch his breath. In the game world, his character is just a weak, pathetic little goblin. He is stuck deep inside the lowest level dungeon with zero hope of escape. Times have changed, but this weakling stays weak, no matter how hard he tries. Out of nowhere, a coworker asks if anyone has heard the latest news. He mentions some guy named Cho, instantly grabbing our main character's attention. The men start chatting about the legendary virtual game, Gates of Destiny. Apparently, this Cho guy unlocked an incredibly rare hidden class by sheer luck. Everyone is obsessed with this virtual reality world because it feels so incredibly real. It lets players completely escape their harsh, exhausting daily lives to just relax. For many, this escape is the only thing keeping them sane. The home gear is crazy expensive, but local internet cafes make it easy. Anyone can pay a small fee to jump in and start playing immediately. The game is so wildly popular that massive real-world investments are pouring in. That changed everything. Soon, virtual items became actual, hard currency. And players guarded their digital loot with their lives. The Gates of Destiny turned the entire world upside down. At first, our main character loved it, but that feeling did not last. Chul-su just wanted to crush a few enemies and unwind. After a long day of work, instead, he had to use his Stone Age skill, mindlessly swinging a pickaxe just to dig up 3 measly chunks of ore. Frustrated, he grabbed his head and complained that they were just mining useless rocks all day without making any real progress. Tearfully, the young man wondered when he would finally become a legendary hero, meet a cute teammate, and get happily married like in his dreams. Suddenly, a beautiful green healing crystal worth 300,000 appeared right in his hands. Grinning wildly, the incredibly excited guy laughed greedily and literally licked the gem, already dreaming of a lavish lifestyle. But his sweet daydream was suddenly interrupted by a soft, polite female voice. The young miner was immediately stunned by the gorgeous girl standing before him, and she, assuming he was a skilled mason, asked him to help her squad. She explained that they wanted to clear the dungeon, but the path was blocked by massive stones, and none of them knew anything about actual excavation. They figured it was best to recruit an experienced miner. So Chul-su replied that while he could break rocks, he was completely useless in a fight. A mustached fighter quickly chimed in, assuring him that they would handle the beasts while he focused on digging. Noble-looking man also added that despite his high status, he was no expert navigating rough mountain terrain, leaving the young miner totally confused. Still, Kim Chul-su realized that joining them actually made perfect sense. This was his big chance. He could finally gather experience points and maybe find some rare, valuable crafting materials. His only real concern was trusting complete strangers, even if players could respawn after dying here. But before he could overthink, the pretty girl suddenly grabbed his hand. Holding his wrist with both of her soft hands, she smiled sweetly. She purred that she absolutely adored masons with strong, capable hands. Our hero completely lost his mind and yelled that he absolutely wanted to join their party. Just seconds later, dripping with sweat, he realized what he had just agreed to. Instant regret washed over him. Remembering a basic level 7 wolf from earlier, he knew these monsters were technically weak yet still completely out of his league. Talk about bad timing. Because right then, a vicious pack of hungry predators surrounded him. All he had to defend himself with was a standard, rusty mining pickaxe. The pack leader lunged forward, and the terrified young man just froze in place, shielding his face, but the lady yelled for him to stay still, unleashing her high-tier salamander skill to burn the beasts alive. Catherine Lee immediately checked on him, kindly asking if Kim Chul-su was all right. Stunned by her devastating power, the young man stood there in total shock, his mouth wide open, though he managed to stammer out a quick thank you. Wiping away a tear, the beauty acts terrified. She desperately begs, "Kim, please do not leave. It is way too dangerous here." Stunned, Kim wonders if he just walked into some cheesy romance plot. After all, she is gorgeous. Nearby, her companion calmly dodges incoming. "Wolves, do not worry," he calmly calls out, drawing his heavy weapon. From his back, he is ready to give them a lightning fast beating. With one sharp swing, the fighter scatters the bloody beasts. Everywhere untouchable, the brave fighter boasts that they have never taken on a quest like this before, but heard of highly unusual ore in this deep cavern, so they decided to check it out themselves. He notes that upgrading looting skills is total nonsense. This instantly triggers our hero, and irritated Kim silently fumes. "Without my help, you arrogant fool would not even be able to break a single rock here." Glaring coldly at his teammate, the stern and quiet Kim Chul-su asks if they really think he has zero combat skills, but the guy knows it is true, making it incredibly difficult to prove otherwise. The bearded teammate warns that if their informant lied to them, they will suffer massive losses. He urges his friend to pray that this does not happen, threatening him with a cold look. Otherwise, Kim will pay dearly for wasting their time in this dungeon. Fuming, Kim thinks about how tired he is of enduring constant humiliation. Just for a few miserable coins in his pocket, he is so used to this. Just finish the job, he tells himself. Take the cash and head straight home, but this miserable, endless grind never stops. In a sudden rage, the bricklayer swings his pickaxe hard, striking the massive cobblestone. It cracks. The stunned boy and his shocked teammates stare at the bizarre sight. Honestly, who could have expected this? It quickly dawns on our hero that he has uncovered a hidden, highly luxurious underground chamber door. The excited young man cannot believe his eyes. Meanwhile, the sweaty, brown-eyed fighter is busy scheming in his head. Smiling greedily, the teammate shouts that there are tons of awesome rewards inside, and maybe they can even unlock a rare hidden class. He yells that they hit the jackpot. Hearing this, the lovely Catherine Lee smiles calmly, but right behind him, a true scoundrel quietly draws his weapon, rushing forward with bloodshot eyes without warning. The happy Kim jumps up and down, shouting that he will get rich, just like the famous Mr. Chom. But right then, player versus player mode activates, and a brutal backstab strikes him down. Talk about an absolute betrayal. Falling to his knees, a stunned Kim Chul-su gasps in pure agony because the blade struck him directly in the spine. The devious Catherine Lee giggles into her hand. It only took one pathetic, naive bricklayer to find this hidden dungeon. Now, Kim realizes he has been utterly betrayed by teammates who knew everything from the very start, only using him as a tool. The fighter grabs Kim by his hair, sneering that he will end this very quickly. He sneers that this is just his fool's payment. The helpless young man gets tossed aside like a wet bag of trash before he can even utter a single word. When Kim Chul-su finally opens his eyes, sheer terror washes over him. He has no idea where he is. Covered in sweat, he realizes he is Somehow still breathing, his attackers did not finish the job, probably just pitying him. Or so he thinks, before realizing the harsh reality of his situation. Actually, his auto-revive just kicked in, but his high-grade healing crystal is now shattered in half and completely worthless, fighting back tears of pure frustration. The young man slams his fists hard against the cold stone floor, knowing his hard-earned money has vanished into thin air. Once he calms down, he looks up and spots an open dungeon gate standing right before him, immediately getting his gears turning. The bitter mason realizes this zone is still uncleared, prompting a dark vow to hunt down the trash deer party that just ambushed him now. Wasting zero time, the guy charges ahead, ready to dive straight into the pitch-black abyss. He leaps forward with arms outstretched, fully committed to the jump. He is completely locked in, imagining a great heroic flight. Well, reality hurts. Instead of open air, a flight of stone stairs waits right below him. He faceplants hard, tumbling down the rocky steps. Rubbing his bruised head, he curses the game developers for this stupid design. Who builds stairs like that? He barely stays conscious. He looks around, wondering if this secret zone actually holds good loot. Looming ahead is a massive stone statue of a creature perched on a throne. Marking this place as the Goblin tomb, the sight immediately sets off alarms. That stone monster is hideous, wearing a creepy, twisted smile that turns his stomach. Moving deeper, Chul-su prays there is something in here besides ugly predators. The silence is heavy, almost suffocating. He starts to wonder where those 3 backstabbing jerks actually went after they left him to rot in the dirt. Just then he spots a gloved hand lying motionless on the ground nearby. Still exhausted, Chul-su creeps closer to inspect the strange sight. He looks down, squinting through the gloom to see what it is. It is the red-haired dwarf from that treacherous trio, collapsed at his feet. A dark pool of blood stains the floor beneath him, sending a chill down Chul-su's spine. He recognizes the dwarf instantly, but his mind is racing. He has no idea what happened. Suddenly, the dwarf begs for a revive in chat. Chul-su tells him he cannot help at all because he simply does not have any revival skills to use. The dying dwarf calls him greedy, accusing him of hoarding all the loot for himself. But the young man genuinely has no clue how to handle this. Right on cue, a system warning flashes red right before his eyes. His level is too low for this dungeon, and he needs to get out immediately. He blinks at the screen in confusion, but the realization hits him too late. Piercing, blood-curdling screams echo from the shadows, somewhere right behind him. Spinning around in panic, he searches for the scream. That is when he sees it, a colossal, monstrous fist gripping something tight. It has crushed the backstabbing jerk who attacked him earlier. Its massive hand completely pins down the exhausted Catherine Lay, who seems to have accepted that they are not making it out. Alive, that hideous Jiger monster stands right in front of him. Kim wonders if this is Goblin territory. Anxiety spikes as he checks. The level 80 beast, victory here is a total pipe dream. The cruel creature opens its massive jaw to swallow him. In a flash, it rips his leg right off. He dies instantly. No scream, just death, barely fighting down a gag. Chul-su finds this absolutely revolting, but continues to watch. The game developers built realistic pain into this virtual world. With actual physical shock, sobbing in terror, Catherine Lee begs to be saved from the beast. But there is nothing he can do. Shaking with tension, he screams at her to use her brain because they are totally outmatched. Even after respawning, the mental shock and pain will linger. It hits his brain directly. With the chaotic game now over, Chul-su panics and decides to run away as fast as possible. At the same time, he feels zero guilt about leaving behind the trio who abandoned him. His own survival and safety is his absolute top priority right now. Forcing himself to stay calm, he picks his path through the dark. He keeps moving forward, stopping for even a second means death. Suddenly, a dry and bitter laugh escapes his lips as he runs. He will survive this ordeal, no matter how dirty he plays. Suddenly, and here is where his shameless survival pays off, an alert pops. The Goblin King recognizes a kindred spirit, impressed by his cowardice. Stunned, the boy looks up at an ugly, bloated stone statue. Perched on a massive throne, he grits his teeth nervously. He hates resorting to this, but he has no other choice. Remembering Catherine Lee crying, the former bricklayer makes a decision. If only he was a little stronger, he would not run. Back there, she takes another brutal, crushing hit from the beast. It wants to wipe her out completely. Kim just wanted a normal job. Where he could live comfortably, he wanted to hunt monsters, not break heavy stones all day until his hands bled. With tears in his eyes, he slams his fist on his chest, yelling that he never chose to become this pathetic creature. His anger boils over completely, and he starts smashing the stone goblin statue that dared to call him a coward. Mocking his natural survival instincts, he screams that coworkers and random players always treated him like absolute garbage. And now this big-nosed freak is doing it too. Suddenly, a system alert flashes. Chul-su has become an honorary goblin. From now on, his new tribe will protect him. Backup is coming. All requirements to unlock a hidden summoner class have been met. The system asks if he is ready to accept this beastly power. The strange terms were entirely new to Chul-su, who closely read every line of them. Notification in surprise, crying gross tears but smiling like a madman. Chul-su decided to decline the offer without a single regret, but right then, the system announced he had officially become a goblin despite his loud protests and total disagreement. Suddenly, a creepy beast with skeletal human hands emerged behind him, bringing a massive wave of danger. A cold, sharp chill ran straight down his spine. The young man immediately realized that trying to run away was totally pointless, so he quickly cooked up a plan. Our hero unlocked a brand new summoning skill to summon a small goblin minion who was fully prepared to fight to the death. Without hesitation, Chul-su activated the skill, but immediately regretted the flashing, bright, annoying special effects. Within a few short seconds, a hideous, hunched creature materializes with a long nose, its twisted grin sparking a trace of genuine fear. Smiling, Chul-su figured this goofy little goblin would make the perfect decoy to draw the monster's attention while he quietly slipped away to safety. Keeping his composure, the young man pointed a finger toward the nearby threat, trying to direct his newly summoned helper. This screaming brawler carried a heavy, crooked wooden club and was ordered to charge straight at the dangerous, hulking beast. The multi-toothed creature roared in anger, thrashing its heavy arms in wild directions to shield itself from the incoming strikes. Absolutely certain he was making the correct choice, Chul-su refused to waste precious seconds and prepared to escape. But get this, in less than 2 short minutes, the goblin actually goes on the attack and wins the battle. With one heavy swing of his club, the summon shattered his opponent's bony arm effortlessly, deeply stunned by the sudden turn. Chul-su stared in utter disbelief, freezing right on the spot with a look of sheer shock, completely lost for any words. The system chimed to announce that he had just secured massive experience points, though he had no clue how it was even possible. Now, the baffled fighter unlocked bizarre new abilities, including things like lunchtime and walking time. The goblin summon immediately leveled up, which was an amazing starting result. Thrilled with his own power, the pointy-eared beast let out a low rumble and grinned wildly, incredibly proud that he had taken down the giant. After the battle, Chul-su closely inspected his seemingly clueless minion, who was currently drooling gross, thick saliva from the very tip of its tongue. Our stone-faced hero was utterly shocked to realize this ugly creature had already reached the absolute max level while he was still weak, but then the massive beast suddenly grabbed a brown-eyed boy tightly in its grasp, preparing to shove him straight into its mouth, a horrifying sight etched into Catherine Lee's terrified mind. Within seconds, the poor boy was crushed to bloody mush, and the brutal beast swallowed the remains whole. Paralyzed with fear, the girl shrieked at the top of her lungs, certain the exact same fate was coming for her next. Thankfully, this was just a virtual reality game, and she only wore virtual reality goggles, but the trauma felt entirely too real. A concerned man rushed over to check on the heavily shaken girl, who she was clearly struggling. Without hesitation, the worried man quickly removed the device from Catherine's eyes, giving her a chance to breathe and calm down. The anxious Chul-su realized a terrible disaster had just unfolded, something he desperately wanted to deny. Looking at the girl's terrified face, he whispered sadly that she could not possibly leave like this. At the same time, the main character's wild summon continued to swing his massive club, dealing heavy damage. The trickster mercilessly crushed pack after pack of wolves, while his master leveled up by the second. Soon the summon's eyes glowed red as its raw bloodlust grew stronger and even More chaotic, meanwhile, Chul-su calmly collected shiny mana stones from the dirty ground, telling Shikit to take it easy. He realized the goblin was feeling pretty brave now. The greedy boy gathered a massive pile of wolf claws, happily laughing that they probably could not even carry all this loot. Since the goblin slew the Jiger, this dungeon was officially cleared, but if his team had actually died, our main character would have been trapped here forever too. He still could not comprehend how this the geared goblin had never leveled up after single-handedly wiping out all the enemies in their way. Strangely, no status window showed details on the summoned creature, leaving the guy to completely guess. It was also a mystery how such a weak summon could defeat a giant mutant with just one hit. Still practically drooling at the thought of riches, Chul-su decided that he had to abuse these broken game glitches before the system patched them. Later, the young man visited a local bank, asking the teller if he could wire some funds directly to another person's account. He then casually mentioned that he brought a few rare monster drops to sell for quick cash. These items were a Jiger counter and its rare membrane, stunning the female clerk, who immediately began to calculate the total price. Seconds later, the shocked girl's face pale as her eyes widened in pure disbelief. She instantly called out for her manager, making Chul-su wonder if screaming like that was even allowed inside a respectable bank. Soon, the young hunter was sitting comfortably in a private office, where the actual bank director poured him some warm tea from a fancy teapot into a delicate teacup. The friendly, short director smiled warmly and addressed him as sir, politely asking if the tea was to his liking. Chul-su bluntly replied that it was ice cold, and the embarrassed manager apologized, admitting he forgot to boil the water. Chul-su dryly reminded him that he was here for cash, not to drink tea, prompting the director to quickly offer a few exclusive investment opportunities. He added that the bank provided elite financial growth, meaning incredibly high returns lay ahead for the young hunter. Though Chul-su understood the game, he asked if these VIP deals should usually be handled by regular bank tellers instead. The director gently advised the young hunter to watch the fluctuating market rates, and then shifted focus to officially appraise the monster materials brought in. Suddenly, he announced that both items were worth 230 million won, leaving the young man frozen with his teacup in absolute, wide-eyed disbelief. Our hero was ready to hug that little goblin who had secured him these priceless drops from slaying the Jiger boss. He suddenly found the ugly green monster incredibly cute. Chul-su managed to calm down a bit, quietly noting how ugly the creature looked. He desperately wondered how to get rid of this idiot while everyone kept staring. The onlookers began pointing and laughing at the idiot who brought a monster. They called him a total psycho, completely unaware of how wrong they were. Sweating bullets, Chul-su kept muttering that this had nothing to do with him. But trying to ignore the intense panic was not helping him at all. Suddenly, unable to take the mocking laughter, his summon swung its club, aimed right at a nearby bystander's knee, but a massive shadow suddenly fell over it. The sudden pressure made the little summon freeze right in its tracks. A massive red-haired warrior stood there, with a weapon resting on his shoulder. He looked completely disgusted to see a filthy goblin wandering through his town. The crowd gasped with excitement upon recognizing the infamous giant named Peyton. He was a top fighter from the powerful Everton Guild. Chul-su was absolutely drenched in sweat. He cringed hard at that ridiculous nickname, immediately labeling the giant as a lunatic. And things are about to get worse. Chul-su yelled at the brute to stay away from his weapon-wielding ally. But the angry warrior completely ignored him and charged forward. He swung his heavy blade to shred the beast, but things quickly went sideways. The small goblin casually raised his hand and delivered a devastating punch. It completely cut off the warrior's attack, shattering his defenses. The high-ranking Peyton instantly collapsed, coughing up a mouthful of fresh blood. Clutching his chest, he writhed in absolute agony. The onlookers watched in utter disbelief as the tiny creature stood victorious. A single punch had crushed their champion. Chul-su began to panic, realizing the danger. If anyone found out he was the summoner, he would be completely doomed. Watching from the shadows, a cloaked figure scoffed at the fallen warrior. He called him a pathetic embarrassment for losing to a low-level monster. This was In Yun, a level 30 assassin, and his deadly crew. They wanted immediate revenge, but Chul-su knew his goblin would easily win again. However, if the creature slaughtered their entire guild, things would get incredibly messy. Chul-su quickly stepped in, shouting that he would deal with the beast himself. But the angry assassin snarled and ordered him to back off. He threatened to cut him down too if he dared to interfere. Chul-su tried to warn them, but the goblin was already moving. It launched a sudden stone-throwing attack straight at the squad. Minsung's Skorko was instantly deleted after taking massive damage. Terrified by the sudden carnage, Chul-su bolted from the scene. He had honestly expected his life in this game to be a total breeze. Instead, it was turning into a complete nightmare. Suddenly, an old man gestured to him. The stranger yelled for him to get over here and take cover. Chul-su asked who he was, but the old man just snapped back in frustration. He insisted there was absolutely no time to explain the situation. In reality, a cunning fighter named Sinul had lured him into a quiet room to kill him. Chul-su screamed that he was just trying to run away when a glowing system window appeared. The message flashed, and even the mighty Goblin Lord stood completely stunned. Treachery launching an attack that forced his enemies to let their guard down. The young man stood there, completely stunned, his mouth hanging open as he argued. That the ruler had first called him weak and cowardly, but now another hurtful. Painful insult was thrown his way, hitting the sensitive warrior right where it hurt. Our hero truly believed he had done nothing wrong, unable to understand why he was being called a defenseless fool, but the bitter warrior explained how that trio of scoundrels had invited him in, only to betray him and stab him in the back. The brave fighter then turned to the goblin, declaring they would no longer stand for being looked down on just because of their weakness. His nose suddenly sharpened, looking just like a monster. Sticking out his tongue, he declared they would tear down the Avatan Guild completely to the ground. Meanwhile, guild members sprinted across rooftops, desperately trying to find the runaway enemy who had escaped with the beast. The blonde called out to Yoonhyuk from the shadows, claiming she would handle the kid herself, and that he did not need to come along to finish him. The fighter noted that there was something highly unusual about this goblin, since it easily slew Patton Annihilator. With a single strike, suddenly the duo heard loud, agonizing screams nearby that were impossible to ignore. The serious assassin instantly recognized the voice of the treacherous Sinriel, realizing he needed help, but right at that moment he froze in place as a sudden chill ran down his spine. Standing right behind him was a bloodthirsty goblin, eager to feast, without wasting a single second. The brave warrior swung his blade, aiming to catch his foe off guard. Incredibly, the flashy, high-powered attack dealt absolutely zero damage, and the monster just kept grinning as if nothing had happened. Now, it dawned on the sweating Yoonhyuk that during the previous attack on his comrade, he had not seen a single thing. The assassin realized that the situation was a total stalemate, and he was now facing certain death. Still, he tried to stay calm, refusing to give up without a fight. The brave warrior lunged forward once more with his twin daggers, but failed completely. He was even more shocked when the hideous goblin effortlessly parried his strike. This was a feat no ordinary creature could ever perform. Jihyun, tense with anticipation, screamed out to Yoonhyuk, who stood frozen, asking if he would let the monster finish him off. The panicked assassin was frantically thinking about his next move, keeping his expression completely blank and staying silent. He could not understand how a low-tier trash mob dealt 1 million points of damage, suspecting that some sort of cheap trick was at play. The assassin had no idea who was manipulating things, but he refused to yield, so he unleashed a forbidden, dark skill. This move slowed his speed by 90%, but guaranteed that every strike would be a critical hit. The anxious blonde asked why he would waste such a skill on a simple goblin, and he quickly replied that the buffs would carry over. Gripping his blades tightly, the fighter declared that they would slaughter this monster in a single strike and clear the area. The worried archer did not argue any further, but urged him to end this quickly before they drew any unwanted attention. She then drew her bow, unleashing Gale Arrow. She claimed she had no desire to waste her combos on a pathetic opponent. That rare skill stripped away every single movement speed buff in the area. Because of this, Inhyuk felt a massive wave of confidence washing over him. Sensing his own sudden power, the ruthless warrior declared playtime was officially over. The assassin dashed across the battlefield at lightning speed to strike his target. He slashed wildly with his daggers, but the giant monster barely even flinched. With a twisted face, he muttered that this was impossible, yet reality was clear. The creature's disgusting insults and smug grin only made things 10 times worse. It was obvious nobody here could stop him. Suddenly, the warrior took a brutal hit. He took massive damage and smashed violently into the stone wall, leaving the archer terrified. The panicked girl understood nothing as a dark shadow emerged. A voice from the mist mocked them, asking who was so confident earlier. Stunned, Jian stood completely frozen in place with her jaw dropped in disbelief. She finally realized that this goblin was definitely no ordinary monster. With a satisfied grin, Kim Soo-hyun admitted that he had summoned this slobbering beast. The grotesque creature kept sticking out its slimy tongue while the panicked girl questioned him. How did he crush a powerhouse from the Abyssal Guild's yin-yang of darkness? Striking a smug pose, our main character coolly explained his simple reasoning. He basically told her he was a villain, which justified his brutal commands. The furious girl clenched her fists and ground her teeth, demanding his real motive. But the young man only sighed, realizing she still did not get it. She bitterly screamed that everything was his fault, calling him an absolute lunatic. In response, the young man just flashed a highly menacing, wicked grin. He reminded her that her group attacked first, making things incredibly difficult for them. Kim Soo-hyun knew that any onlookers would completely misunderstand this chaotic scene. To play along, he quietly ordered the goblin to make Jaehyun scream louder. Nearby civilians heard the terrifying shrieks, instantly putting everyone on high alert. A bystander pointed toward the noise, quickly spotting the troublemakers from earlier. Soo-hyun saw the crowd arriving and realized they needed to wrap this up. He quickly told his monster to play its part so they could escape. Ordering his summon to finish the job, the playful beast complied immediately. It clamped a hand over Jaehyun's mouth, pinning her wrist to prevent escape. Just then, someone screamed that the monster had completely wiped out the guild. They claimed it destroyed the entire Avatan guild. Now, the beast was about to execute the sole female survivor. Hearing this completely stunned Kim Chul-su, who felt an overwhelming sense of doom. The panicked young man ordered the goblin to let her go right now. Onlookers gasped as a guy wearing basic starter gear stood his ground. He was actually confronting a beast that had easily slaughtered elite guild members. Surprisingly, the massive goblin slowly backed away and released its grip on her. Poor Jaehyun sobbed, unable to comprehend this sudden act of mercy. But the real shock was seeing tears streaming down Kim Chul-su's own face. He softly whispered that it was finally over and that she was safe now. She was safe now, he promised no one would touch her. The gathering crowd immediately assumed he had bravely saved her. It was officially game over for the monster. Naturally, a massive wave of joy began. The crowd went wild, they raised their fists and cheered the young man on. They urged him to crush the beast, rooting for him with all their hearts. Our hero was completely stunned. He never expected things to play out like this, even though he was ready. To face his own death just moments ago, he assumed they would mock him. But then it clicked, the crowd had no idea he actually summoned the troll. Before this, he pretended he just wanted to protect the Avatan Guild from suffering any further, asking for their permission to handle the massive goblin himself. Right then, the brave warrior shielded the panicked Jaehyun, standing firmly in front of her while ordering the monster to release her. He told the beast its time was up, but wait for it, that entire dramatic hero scene was just playing in Chul-su's head. In reality, the young man was hailed as a hero, risking his life to protect a lady from the monster. He absolutely loved the attention, letting out a sly chuckle while hiding his face in his hands. Now he had to deal with the blonde, he told the terrified Jaehyun that he would spare her life as long as she kept his connection to the troll a secret. Tears streaming down her face, the blue-eyed girl quickly agreed, swearing that nobody would ever find out. With a calm smile, Chul-su relaxed and prepared to finish this little show so they could wrap things up. It was time for his big acting debut. He bellowed that the monster dared to invade their village and cause such terrible pain. Faking his fury, the fighter shouted at the top of his lungs, declaring that he would eliminate this threat right here and now. Suddenly, his goblin summoner skill activated. A glowing golden collar and a heavy chain snapped around the monster's neck. He pulled the massive, pot-bellied beast behind him, trying to make the blonde feel safe so she would finally calm down. Leaping down, he yelled that he would show no mercy, leaving the poor monster completely confused by what his master was doing. In the blink of The beast was slammed face first into the asphalt as public punishment. Chul-su kept the heavy metal chain resting over his shoulder, completely in control. Of the situation, the watching crowd was absolutely stunned. They could not believe that a simple rookie in this city could wield such an incredibly advanced skill to control high-level monsters. Meanwhile, he quietly used his basic walking skill, which instantly boosted his pet's mood. Jae-hyun watched on in complete disbelief, as the crowd finally realized why the guild stood no chance. But get this, nobody suspected that this entire spectacular showdown was a complete lie. One observer pointed out that it was not because the guild was too weak, but because nobody else stood even a single chance against that brute, our hero. Then claimed that while he could not defeat the massive creature, he could easily chase it off. Next, Chul-su activated his summoner system to feed his pet and secretly pulled out a roasted sausage. He tossed the treat dozens of meters away, shouting to the crowd that this would finally banish the vile beast. Right on cue, the hungry monster bolted straight after the food. Knowing there was no time to waste, the tense hero ordered the crowd to shut the city gates immediately, locking the monster outside. Meanwhile, the bloated creature kept digging in the dirt for its sausage while the townspeople scrambled to block the exit. Right at that moment, the iron gate slammed shut in a cloud of dust, leaving the ghoul stranded outside. The panicked crowd realized the danger had passed, even if they could barely believe it. Wiping sweat from his forehead, the actor Chul-su declared that the town was finally safe. Standing tall, he asked if everyone was all right, and the crowd burst into wild cheers. This guy almost got branded a total psychopath after wiping out an entire guild, but he still cleaned up the mess. Standing behind him was Jae-hyun. She admitted she was the only one left who knew about the secret link between the young man and the goblin, and that all of her companions were dead. Lost in thought, Chul-su snapped back to reality, instantly recognizing the voice of the girl he saved, but he had no clue what she wanted. The blue-eyed girl promised to keep her word, and Chul-su realized he could use her to his advantage. He heard that in Pascal, players get infinite experience points, making them completely safe from harm. That is why they called this zone the Sacred Lands. The fighter warned that if the blonde was lying, he would camp her respawn point and slaughter her repeatedly. For maximum suffering, pale with sheer terror, the girl broke down weeping. And can you even blame her for shaking? This guy was dead serious. Moments later, she shrieked at the top of her lungs, sending startled birds scattering into the sky. Later on, Chul-su collapsed onto his bed to unwind. Still, he muttered that this lifestyle was not what he truly wanted, yet scoring a luxurious room in exchange for a little hero work was pretty sweet. Talk about a nice perk. Soon, the young man tensed up, falling deep into thought about everything that had just happened. He was completely powerless back in that brutal hidden dungeon, but next time, he would definitely save Catherine Lane if given another shot. After that, the clever guy remembered the goblin eye from the monster lord and decided to inspect its details. He had unlocked this specific class because he felt a strange kinship with ghouls. Now he even got combat bonuses just for being vile. When the fighter opened up the skill shop, he saw that advanced abilities were locked tight, leaving him with just one real choice, a skill called Rally. Caught his attention, looking incredibly promising. Immediately, the warrior activated the skill to test it. Out of nowhere, a long-nosed troll materialized right in front of him. This ugly creature gave Chul-su a massive scare, sending his heart straight into his throat. The panicked guy whispered that if anyone found this big-eared beast in here, they would both be dead meat. Just then, he heard the innkeeper calling out from downstairs, asking if everything was okay. He yelled back that he was fine. Shaking, Chul-su turned to the goblin and begged him in a frantic whisper to put that spiked club down, telling him to chill. That big-eared creature was his mirror image, while his foe kept making weird noises. Soon the partners lay down in bed, where the tired boy muttered that this cruel world was just crawling with scoundrels. By the next morning, he stepped into the room, where the burly Patton noticed him right away and instantly called him yesterday's freak. The bully remembered this was the guy who saved Everton. The anxious boy quietly confirmed it. With a shaky nod, the stern In-hyuk noted the boy had no reason to help them. They were enemies, yet In-hyuk thanked him anyway. The assassin sitting behind quietly told a serious Geo to relax. It was obvious the kid had zero interest in fighting. Suddenly, the brave young man declared that the reason he helped them despite their murder attempt was simple. He needed something. The mysterious man grinned, saying that regardless of any unfolding circumstances, they were deeply indebted to him and never ignored a debt. The hero said he wanted to reach the next zone immediately, since he had already reached level 30, asking if they knew how to get there. The incredibly serious Jihyo realized he meant Fiorindal and was about to say a few words about the local expert. Suddenly, an inconspicuous man with gray hair on his face joined the conversation, claiming he possessed the necessary information. The sly, dissatisfied signal shocked the young man, claiming he knew exactly how to reach the needed area. The brave warrior wanted immediate revenge on him for past deceptions, but the panicked old man quickly covered his face, offering a sincere apology. Coughing, he added that Chul-su had single-handedly crushed the goblin, showing truly incredible power. The old man even suggested Chul-su might be stronger than their entire group, which heavily annoyed the anxious Patton, the completely emotionless young man knew very well that this was not entirely true, but kept analyzing his limits. Kim realized that if that hidden assassin had struck him yesterday, he would have died from a single blow. Just as they had threatened, the starting area, called the Lion, was split into 5 regular dungeons. The first was a grassy field of slugs that spawned. Next was the mine, whose cold entrance was often covered in beautiful, gentle snowflakes. Then came a dark, gloomy forest, along with other open dungeons that Kim could enter at any time, which were totally open. But a bald man suddenly surprised him with a warning, revealing a massive catch. To leave, he had to clear a raid. These dangerous gates only opened at scheduled times, with strict limits on time and attempts. The assassin added that Lev's dungeon only opened once a month. That's why they had all gathered here to clear it. Now the young man finally got it. Everyone in this room was stuck, which made him pretty uneasy. A massive stir warrior growled that yesterday was raid day, but that damn goblin completely ruined all their plans, meaning they were stuck here until the next raid. Kim Chul-su was stunned to realize he would be stuck here for a whole month. No way. The young man refused to waste time in the city, where he could not earn money. His pet could easily destroy stronger dungeons. Enraged, the fighter grabbed his opponent by the cloak and shouted, demanding to know why he had to waste his precious life. The humble Manhwa confirmed it. It was true. He added that everyone else here was absolutely furious but helpless. Adjusting his long cloak, the completely unbothered man calmly stated that the boy's debt was now fully repaid. Then the members of the Abaddon Guild decided to head back to their starting point, while the pensive young man stood frozen. The concerned, blue-eyed Jihyun looked back at him with deep sadness. Still, she was totally powerless. She was too afraid to speak a single word to him. Instead, she simply rushed to catch up with the others, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Within seconds, they all emptied out of the small building, lost in their own worries. No one suspected that behind a nearby wooden crate, the hero's crafty goblin was hiding, plotting something secret. The long-nosed creature grinned as he planned his next move, knowing he had to remain completely hidden. He glanced around carefully. No one must see him. Not a soul noticed. Everything was perfect. Soon after, a crimson portal materialized deep within the forest, whipping up strong gusts of wind. Suddenly, the Abaddon Guild members received a system alert that the boss raid was active, even though there were still about 30 days left. Strong and Hayek grew highly suspicious of the message, immediately sensing something was off, though he did not rush to conclusions. Same alert popped up for Kim Chul-su, who was standing in the middle of a rustic wooden tavern, deep in thought. The stunned young man tensed up. He could not believe the entrance to the raid dungeon was open too. Everyone, grinning, a battle-hungry warrior pointed out that the portal had indeed opened way ahead of schedule. Honestly, who could have seen this coming? In just a single day, the final raid was ready, letting them advance to the next stage. A dark-cloaked fighter asked how many people were already inside, and Sinro replied that those who were prepared had already cleared the entire area and advanced to the next zone. The rogue concluded that only members of their own guild would compete this time. Yet there was no fear in his eyes. Suddenly, the hero appeared, wearing a cold smirk, quietly telling them he knew they had all lied. Honestly, you cannot blame him for being this furious. He knew they would have to wait a whole month, only to betray him to go. First, enraged, Chul-su called himself a fool for trusting people. Again, after everything he had survived, an upset Jae-hyun immediately stepped in, trying to calm him down by explaining that he had completely misunderstood and that they did not lie. A common Hyuk asked if Kim was joining them, and the young man replied he could not sit idle while they lined their pockets. The stern commander demanded a quick explanation of everything. A clear briefing was crucial before they went in, ensuring no stupid mistakes down the line. He explained that a single path led straight to the raid boss named Reeve. They would face him immediately upon entering. Still, the leader doubted it would be dangerous, especially since Chul-su was at a lower level than them. But caution never hurts. Patton, itching for a fight, yelled that their guild master might be absent. But the Avatan guild was fully ready for battle. The warriors rushed to the portal, shouting the boss would take 10 seconds. Monster would only take 10 seconds. Keeping cool, Hyuk smiled. With quiet confidence in his team and his own skills, walking toward the gate, the fearless assassin muttered that everyone had better prove their worth today. Prove their skills in battle, the hero whispered to the troll hiding behind a nearby tree, telling him to stay put until he called for him so they would not cause any trouble. Our daredevil knew all too well that anyone could betray him, just like before. But you can bet he was not letting history repeat itself. He was carrying an incredibly rare healing crystal, designed to resurrect a player with 100% health upon dying. Then the young fighter remembered he had actually used the artifact already. But shaking off the worry, he plunged straight into the portal. In just a brief moment, Kim Chul-su materialized inside the dangerous raid zone, knowing he had to stay completely alert. Suddenly he froze, eyes wide, in sheer disbelief as he spotted the raid boss standing nearby. The level 40 steel giant was in a total rage, charging forward and smashing absolutely everything in its path. No surprise, but the team had seriously overestimated their strength, and now they were running for their lives. A visibly panicked Hyuk demanded to know what the clever Sinew was planning this time. But the terrified old man could only sweat and insist he knew nothing. Jae-hyuk, completely stressed out, screamed at the hero to stop standing around and run. While there was still time, smiling, the oddly calm protagonist asked if they were joking with him, though nobody understood what he really meant. In a fit of pure rage, the fighter bellowed, asking if those cowards seriously wanted to flee from a secret dungeon like this. They said getting hit by a level 40 threat would mean far worse than simple death. But the absolutely fearless Kim simply noted that the entire level gap was only 10, meaning it would not be nearly as bad as the final zone. They would just throw up blood and pass out. Asking if these idiots seriously expected rare rewards to come that easily. He gave the fleeing cowards full permission to run away, declaring that he would claim every single reward for himself. As he braced himself to face the massive foe, charging forward, the warrior activated his rally skill to summon a goblin, screaming that he would destroy this giant himself. Standing beneath the starry sky, the pointy-eared creature prepared to aid its master in battle. He was ready to prove himself at the highest level. A sudden draft picked up, but he had no clue what it meant. So he just stood frozen. Meanwhile, that massive steel knight kept drawing closer. It headed straight for the arrogant brunette, who refused to run away. He desperately hoped a powerful troll would show up to save him. But the steel knight already swung its heavy iron fist right at his face. Just like that, the idiot died. Patton scoffed. Was this guy seriously yesterday's hero? Hyuk stayed completely cold. Who cares about some dead guy who had it coming? But then the escape route vanished. The dungeon portal suddenly snapped shut. Panic swept through the entire group. A dead serious Sinral broke the silence. He explained that normal zones sometimes mutate, turning standard raids into hidden dungeons. This explained why a monstrous boss had suddenly blocked their path. There was no escaping this nightmare. They had to fight to the bitter end. Meanwhile, the gamer in the real world was sweating bullets after his avatar's death. His VR headset was still glued to his face as he sat there, furious. How could a giant one-shot him like that when he was over level 30? Checking his stats, he realized he made a fatal mistake. He forgot to spend his goblin points, completely throwing away his only shot at victory. He could not even summon the troll now because the gate was locked tight. All his hard-earned rewards were on the line. back in the dungeon, the enraged assassin gave the order. They had to start hunting immediately. It was their only way out alive. Meanwhile, Chul-su lay flat on the stone floor, his eyes wide open in shock. Suddenly, the fierce Jaehyun unleashed her tailwind arrow technique. It drove the monster back while doubling the movement speed of her entire team. That was a massive speed boost. The veteran fighter barked out orders next. He told Yun Hyuk and Minjun to strike first to find a weakness. But the young warrior barely heard his words. The frontline fighters leaped high into the air, completely fearless. The monstrous giant stood waiting below, fully prepared to grind them to absolute dust. The beast let out a massive roar, ready to crush them with a devastating counterattack. The cold-blooded assassin darted from the shadows with his partner. Every monster has a weak spot. They planned to strike 32 times, testing the giant's entire body to see which wound cut the deepest. But a panicked Minjun quickly realized something was horribly wrong. Can you believe it? Literally 0 damage. His ultimate strategy had failed him completely for the first time. His composed ally pointed out they only had 2 options left. Either this boss possessed god-tier defense, or they were totally outclassed. Right then, the furious giant swung another earth-shattering iron fist. The beast was determined to wipe out every single intruder in its way. But the agile assassin dodged the strike, leaping away just in time. He countered with a blinding strike, carving a deep, bleeding wound into its skin. And Hyuk realized his regular sword skills barely scratched this monster. Effect on the giant, so he had to pivot to a new plan. That was when they learned that the steel giant absolutely despised the weak, which was a massive clue. This passive let him shrug off any attack, dealing less than 5% damage, keeping the boss untouched. Patton nervously shouted that only their leader could actually hurt a level 40 enemy, but old man Sinryong quickly cut him off, saying someone else could do it even better depending on how the fight went. He was talking about Jaehyun, who had the unique ability to use her own life force to draw back her bow. And the more health she sacrificed, the deadlier her arrows became. The 10th strongest man did not know her true potential, but promised to buy them the time they needed. With a roar, the angry swordsman unleashed his core combat ability, empowering his body. He was locked in. Ready for round 2, the brave warrior started taunting the massive beast, shouting insults until the monster lost its mind and swung its massive fists straight at him. Lying flat on the floor, Kim thought Patton was a total complete idiot for taunting the boss instead of running for his life. Right then, the giant unleashed a brutal barrage of fists into the stone ground, shattering the floor, completely determined to crush them. Unbelievable, the swordsman took only 1,000 points of damage, so he grinned and called the giant weak, continuing his bold taunts, standing behind him. A tense Sinryong warned him to stay focused and alert, reminding him they were not here to play games. The old man warned that a single slip-up would ruin the entire plan, forcing the swordsman to lock in and get serious. Suddenly, a shared damage skill activated, linking their health pools together with the boss, meaning whoever had more health took a heavier share of hits. Our hero, now a floating spirit, watched in worry since the evading guild members were incredibly low-level with 0 special hidden classes, but the stern In Hyuk declared that his squad of assassins would break the giant's defenses themselves. Using their passive skills, by hitting his weak spots, they successfully cut down the enemy's defense by 2%. Not bad at all. The fearless assassins rushed to attack the monster from behind without hesitation. Meanwhile, Chul-su watched in disbelief, baffled by their power. Up front, Seonil and Patton held the line while a focused Jaehyun covered them with her arrows. The worried young man realized this squad could actually defeat the boss, but he would gain 0 experience or loot. The game still considered him dead. Suddenly, the giant swung his massive fist at the brave warrior, who stood totally unfazed. Yet the massive giant grew wary, sweating as he stared at his opponent, trying to figure out what kind of trick they were trying to pull off. As it turned out, the red-eyed brute targeted someone else, prompting a warning shout. Instantly, a massive iron hand came crashing down onto the stone ground, cracking it in a somewhat clumsy, desperate strike. Now watch, Kim pops a restoration stone, deciding to help these underdogs since he has the highest level here. Suddenly, his system pinged him. This superior crystal revives players with 100% health when they hit 0. Down to 0, smirking, Kim Chul-su says the star of the show has finally arrived. Late and the steel giant instantly targets him, unleashing a deadly skill. This superficial destruction attack instantly vaporizes Suji, Hyun-soo, and Min-sung, their swift runner, leaving them dead, most of the party. Scattered in all directions, not even having a single second to comprehend the blindingly fast strike. Only the furious Patton remains on the battlefield, clutching his sword and determined to avenge his fallen allies. Raging, the fierce annihilator screams, asking how that metal bastard dared wound his comrades. Seonil urgently tells him to stay alert. He must lock his focus onto the giant trying to distract them, unhesitating. The warrior activates his special ability and swings directly at the boss, aiming to chop off its limbs, but the heavy blow is met with a brutal counter, dealing nearly 4,000 points of damage to his health. The tense old man realizes they have been completely outsmarted. Now the red-haired warrior lies motionless on the ground, showing no signs of life. Moments later, a stunned Kim Chul-su receives a system notification that Patton and Seonil have died. Sweating with nerves, Chul-su screams that it is not his fault since he only revived himself. Meanwhile, the cold-blooded Hyuk slips back into the fight from the shadows, holding a curved dagger. In his hands, he knows very well that monsters naturally target squishy healers and archers over heavy tanks, but due to a sudden battle cry, the giant targeted Patton the Annihilator instead of their actual leader. The moment the overlooked player resurrected, it completely reset the boss's aggro, leaving the team with 0 time to react before being wiped out. Trembling with adrenaline, Jae-hyun asks her leader what their next move is, suggesting she could just fire a charged shot. She can burn her own health to draw her bow, boosting the ultimate damage scale. Her tense ally warns that firing right now ruins their entire battle plan, urging her to keep her cool. They haven't even fully stacked the assassin's passive debuff to reduce the enemy's armor by 2%. The fearless warrior charges straight into battle, swearing to cut down the steel giant, begging her to hold the skill. No matter what, he adds that without their blonde allies' charge, they have absolutely 0 chance of winning this brutal fight. Meanwhile, the focused archer remains entirely locked onto her target, while a puzzled Kim Chul-su asks if he can help, but the stressed archer snaps that he cannot do a single thing without his goblin, telling him to back off. Cruelly, Jae-hyun mutters that the useless kid is just a massive hindrance, leaving him completely stunned and deeply hurt by her venomous glare. Internally, the bitter young man blames her for everything, noting that because of this stupid squad, he was unable to bring his powerful troll summons into the dungeon. Smirking, he wonders if they dare look down on him. Even though they have no choice but to rely on his power, he decides to let. They fought to the death, and the steel giant locked his sights on the harbinger of death as his main target. The chief assassin knew this giant preferred the archer from the Avestan Guild, forcing him to adapt, tightening his grip on his dagger. The desperate warrior roared that he was the target, not the girl. He was the real opponent here. Instantly, he triggered his dual blade skill and dealt nearly 2,000 damage points to the beast. It was a massive gamble, but the sudden strike only infuriated the monster further. It let out a deafening roar of pure agony that shook the very ground. The agile assassin leaped up the stone ledges, keeping himself completely out of reach. This was his plan all along: push the beast to its absolute breaking point. He pressed his advantage, closing the distance in a flash, with a sudden burst. He sliced his daggers across the giant's throat, unleashing a fountain of dark blood. He landed perfectly, completely untouched, with his blades still raised in a defensive stance. He was ready for whatever came next. There was no way he would back down. His intense gaze remained locked on the towering metal threat. He needed a devastating strike. And that was exactly the high-damage strategy that Hyuk decided to unleash. He knew 3 full strikes were needed to force the giant's total focus. Right on cue, a sudden system alert flashed right before his eyes. The steel giant had officially targeted the ruthless assassin. He had only 3 stamina points left to strike the weak spots, but he had to make every blow count. His raw offense would have to make up for the lack of defense. All he needed to do was buy time, even throwing out a smug taunt to bait it. A critical alert popped up: dodge all physical attacks for the next 3 seconds. But right then his momentum shattered. He was left completely paralyzed. The system screen delivered the worst possible news. He was completely out of mana. The giant did not waste a single second, ready to crush this annoying pest forever. From the sidelines, a helpless Kim Chul-su watched the unfolding disaster in utter disbelief. He could not believe things had taken such a terrible turn. He stepped over to the fallen in Hyuk, whose cold eyes stared back chillingly. The frustrated warrior barked out, "You should have just stayed down instead of rushing back." But because of pure, blinding arrogance, their entire plan had completely shattered. The tense Jaehyun snapped back in a panicked voice, yelling that his reckless resurrection skill was the real reason everything was ruined. They were trading heated insults, desperately trying to shift the blame onto each other. Neither side would back down, locked in a useless, screaming argument. In their blind rage, they completely let their guard down, forgetting the real threat. The furious metal titan was still standing right there. Suddenly, a deafening roar shattered their bickering, leaving both of them paralyzed with absolute terror. There was nowhere left to run. The giant locked onto the harbinger of death once more, determined to wipe her off the battlefield once and for all. Desperate, Jaehyun drew her bowstring back, knowing this was her only shot left. It was far from fully charged, but she had to release it now. Then, she glanced over at Kim Chul-su, who was casually staring at the holographic scoreboard. A mysterious, knowing grin slowly spread across the warrior's face. Chul-su asked if the blonde archer was actually paralyzed while recovering. Her strength, the panicked, blue-eyed girl, had absolutely no idea what his goal was. But she fought with everything she had to maintain a shred of control. Tears welled. In her eyes, she begged him to stay back, almost dropping her bow out of fear. Suddenly, the brunette hoisted her right onto his neck. Remembering she needed 10 more seconds to recharge, in the meantime, the steel giant kept smashing the ground, shattering heavy stone slabs, but the nimble pair leaped clear. Watching them, Jaehyun completely froze, unable to comprehend how Kim could move almost as fast as the late Yun-hyuk from the shadows. The truth was that the cocky young man had dumped all his stat points into agility, something even an assassin would avoid doing. He also received an extra stat point from his goblin, whom he was annoyed with again. Meanwhile, the harbinger of death was finally ready to unleash her shot. Seriously, she begged him not to rush her, warning him that a single miss would end it all. Chul-su quickly reminded her. The Everton Guild owed him big, making it hard for the girl to focus her mind. Her hands were trembling. Still, the brave guy noted they owed him for all the blood he spilled earlier and that high-tier healing crystal, the iron. Colossus suddenly froze, scanning the area to locate its targets. With blinding speed, the creature grew more furious by the second, accustomed to obliterating its enemies in a heartbeat. But the archer activated her arrow of death once they were directly behind the giant, securing a major advantage for their side. The exhausted girl was down to just 1% health, but Chul-su urged her to keep pushing. Right then, the raging Colossus unleashed his World Destroyer skill, bringing out the ultimate heavy artillery. Without any hesitation, he slammed both fists down, shattering the entire cavern. Gritting his teeth, a sweating Kim realized with dread that no joke, this giant had been hiding this devastating ability as a final trump card. Jaehyun was sitting at a lethal 1% health after his self-revive. And with only 100 shield points left, another hit meant instant death. Desperate, the tense archer cried out that the flying stone debris was completely blocking her line of sight, sweating under the pressure. The blonde realized she couldn't target the boss, making things worse. As the pressure peaked, Chul-su was suddenly hit by warm memories of hanging out and playing games with his close friends. Even though they urgently needed to escape, a clawed green hand with long, sharp nails suddenly emerged from the wall. Neither of them spotted it immediately. That long-nosed goblin, eager to stretch his limbs, burst through to help. He was here to save his master and companion. Chul-su cheered loudly, shouting that it felt like an eternity since he used the summon skill. The archer, keeping her cool, wondered how the summoned ghoul had literally shattered the fabric of the dungeon space just to force his way in. Wasting no time, the troll grabbed a wooden club, acting as a shield for his comrades, which was actually pretty noble. The enraged monster shrieked in severe pain throughout his entire body, though his movements remained stiff and helpless. Smiling, the completely calm brunette calmly noted that those were pretty loud last words for a hidden boss. Then he lightly tossed the excited Goblin declaring that the long-awaited climax had finally arrived. At that moment, the archer released a fully charged arrow of death, aiming straight at his head while the daredevil hopped around to get a better view. A few seconds later, a massive hole opened up in the steel giant, and his health bar rapidly drained. Finally, the massive brute collapsed to the ground, shattering the stone slabs beneath him as the party stared silently. Just like that, system notifications popped up, confirming the successful clear of the hidden dungeon inside the Iron Giant's lair. Stunned, Jihyun couldn't believe they had actually conquered the raid zone, but it was real. For her combat contributions, the girl gained 4 levels, reaching 31st rank as an archer. Chul-su, meanwhile, began to push himself up, quietly ignoring the dull ache in his numb legs. Our main character also gained 3 levels, but got absolutely nothing else. Talk about a massive disappointment. The hot-headed young guy screamed that they deserved their rewards right now, after risking their lives in that intense battle. Right then, upon seeing the notice resurrecting all fallen allies, the serious In Hyuk asked if everyone was all right. The exhausted Padden muttered that he tasted blood in his mouth, warning that a higher-level dungeon would have wiped them out completely. Right around then, the party suddenly noticed that the treacherous Sinrail had stopped breathing. His eyes rolled back in his head, which was quickly fixed with a hard slap to his head. With a heavy sigh, the team leader shifted focus to more pressing matters. Trying to keep a cool head, he asked Kim Chul-su to explain what just went down, but the hot-tempered guy barked at him to back off. The assassin asked what was wrong with the kid, and a worried Jihyun could barely find her words. The harbinger of death received a system alert stating she had not met the requirements for the hidden class. The upset blonde was at a loss, but fought to keep her emotions in check. She knew that simply clearing this hidden dungeon was not enough, but her next step remained a mystery. Our hero realized they could not make any real progress until they unlocked the specific requirements of the dungeon. The party could still move forward without clearing the boss, which actually seemed like a much more natural way to handle things. Right then, Kim Chul-su was supposed to claim the exact reward he had been sweating so hard over. A concerned Jihyun suggested they split everything fairly after discussing it with the whole group, but our incredibly greedy brunette, he lets out a beastly roar, making it crystal clear he won't share. Behind his back, the guild members whisper, desperately trying to figure him out. But they get absolutely nowhere. Still, a serious In Hyuk reminds them of something. They already owe Kim Chul-su their lives twice over by now. Since their main mission is complete, they shouldn't hold back this surprise reward. Just a few meters away, In Hyuk lands softly and begins to gather his thoughts. Slowly coming to, he listens as the stern old man grumbles in frustration. He swings his club, calling the fight pointless, while the shadow assassin calls him out. The hot-headed fighter snaps back, yelling that the old bastard betrayed him twice. He rages at the betrayal, but the cold-blooded leader shuts him down. He calmly points out that if they wanted the kid dead, he'd be gone. They have more than enough power to make it happen. Still, the fighter gasps. Is it really wise to hand over the Iron Giant's unique bow? That weapon could help their guild immensely. Meanwhile, the greedy kid grabs everything. He clutches every single piece of loot, preparing to bolt, even though he cannot use bows. A system alert warns Kim Chul-su that he cannot sell or equip unique items. They are locked to specific classes, but our greedy dark-haired main character does not care. He just wants a cool weapon since everyone else has one, In Hyuk's eyes. He tells him to stop playing around and hand the artifact over to Jihyun. Wearing a sly smirk, the young trickster agrees, but demands compensation first. Since this item cannot be traded normally, it is technically priceless. The logic seems messy, but he chuckles and makes his real terms clear. They must buy it from him. Shin Ryle is left absolutely speechless by this audacity. He realizes the con artist planned this entire scheme to milk them for cash. Staring at that obnoxious grin, the quiet In Hyuk shakes his head. The kid looks exactly like a greedy goblin, but In Hyuk has no clue. He does not see the ghoul hiding nearby, or realize he and Kim Chul-su are partners. Jiyeon knows the truth, but she stays quiet and casually adjusts her gear. She keeps stirring her drink, pointing out that the giant bow is too heavy anyway. A delicate fighter like her could never wield such a massive weapon. Our main character thanks the Abaddon Guild, though the assassin still finds him obnoxious. He really knows how to get under people's skin. They ask where he will go next. He laughs it off, asking if the answer is not completely obvious. He plans to head somewhere isolated, leaving the others to call him a weirdo. They do not push further. Instead, the leader decides it is time to move. He rallies his squad, asking if everyone is packed and ready to go. Before leaving, the cute blonde shoots a sweet, secret smile toward Chul-su. Left alone with his goblin partner, he can finally catch his breath. It is time to plan, plus, he just scored the legendary thief's gloves. This broken item lets him steal anything, but only once and only from lower levels. But his real prize is the purified steel he secretly snatched. Those guild fools were so obsessed with the weapons, they completely missed it. The clever guy also pocketed 3 mysterious metal fragments. He smirks, remembering how Avatin dared to double-cross him first. Meanwhile, over in the sun-drenched village of Phoenix Elbasar, heavy iron armor clanks everywhere as players wander around. Chul-su is absolutely thrilled. He has never seen so many high-level elites and immediately wonders about their insane earnings. The greedy fighter can already smell the sweet, intoxicating scent of potential gold. But first, he has to put in the work. Real gear upgrades come first. Honestly, getting instantly one-shotted by a weaker monster is a massive wake-up call for him. That beast was 9 levels below Chul-su, forcing him to rethink his terrible armor. To be fair, he has been wearing the exact same beginner trash gear since rank 3. Chul-su shivers. Why does his current gear actually give negative defense stats? Suddenly, his summoned goblin starts aggressively tugging at his pants to get his attention. Chul-su sternly warns the creature to behave, but he quickly realizes that is the least of his worries. Just a few meters away, a massive, fluffy white beast stares them down. The massive creature glares at them with pure malice, leaving Chul-su completely frozen with fear. He begs his drooling goblin summon to protect him. Suddenly, a calm voice breaks the tension as a white-haired girl comments on his green goblin. Riding high on the fluffy creature is a level 76 summoner. She looks down, asking if Chul-su was the one who summoned the little ghoul. How could such a fragile-looking girl command a beast like this? She cheerfully explains that her beast, Michelle, is actually very well behaved inside the village limits. But Chul-su panics, pointing out that the beast is literally drooling everywhere. Nervous boy sweats bullets, realizing how insanely strong she is without even fighting her. Clearly, the famous Avatin guild is nothing. None of the other local factions could survive a fight with her. Smiling, the polite lady calls him a sweet child and asks for the absolute honor of his name. He introduces himself as Kim Chul-su, but she isn't even looking at him. Her eyes are actually fixed on the tiny green goblin. Looking quite sad, she wonders aloud if he really hasn't named such a cute little pet. Chul-su tenses up, seeing absolutely no point in naming a basic summoned monster. Besides, he cannot comprehend how anyone could ever find this ugly thing cute. She gently strokes Michelle's soft fur. One-sided relationships are always incredibly unstable, she points out gently. Notice how aggressively that creature reacted when told to protect you. It growled because its master never even bothered to give it a name. The charming lady smiles, expressing hope that Chul-su won't be quite so boring next time. He snapped back that he has absolutely no issues with his companion. Brushing her warnings aside, he searches the village for a decent blacksmith. Soon, Chul-su meets an old, gray-haired crafter who stares in absolute shock. This blunt crafter, Humphrey, offends the youngster by calling his equipment complete junk. Chul-su gets defensive, loudly arguing that is exactly why he came to buy something better. The burly blacksmith quickly presents a heavy, durable steel breastplate. It costs 350 coins, promising it will suit him well. After all, even with a high-level summon, everything is over the second the summoner dies. He needs solid protection. Chul-su buys it. Chul-su reaches out toward the digital shop display to finalize the purchase. The grumpy Humphrey mutters that he crafted this steel specifically for reckless fools. Our young hero inspects the gear, hoping it actually lives up to the blacksmith's high praise. Its name just minutes later, the surprised Chul-su strapped on the chest. Protector closing his eyes to focus on the sensations. Suddenly, he cried out that he could not move at all, making the stern blacksmith yell back that fools like him were better off staying still. Soon, a hot-headed merchant offered to buy the sturdy steel armor for 30 gold coins, but the stunned Chul-su was completely unsatisfied. Right then, the puzzled young man noticed a bright exclamation mark pop up. above the blacksmith's head, leaving him totally confused about what it meant. And angry Humphrey shouted that he could not find the item he desperately needed, and Chul-su had absolutely no idea what the man was doing. The panicked blacksmith explained that his hammer was missing, making it impossible to forge any gear. The disappointed Chul-su pointed out that the man still had another tool, but the eccentric blacksmith snapped that it was not the same and demanded his item back. The grumbling old blacksmith insisted that the sledgehammer had to be in the underground passage near the village entrance. Just then, our hero received a new system quest from Humphrey to find the hammer, with a reward that let him process raw materials into armor. The focused young man immediately started to carefully read through the glowing lines on his holographic quest screen. Realizing this was a major turning point, now Chul-su finally understood why equipment crafted from hidden boss materials fetched such a high price. Resources like crushed and purified steel were incredibly valuable, especially when fully processed into high-tier gear. Now watch, wearing a sly grin, our daring protagonist prepared to plunge into the underground passage, sensing some serious profit ahead. Serious level-up benefits. Right at that moment, a system notification popped up to confirm that the warrior had successfully accepted the blacksmith's quest. A confident Chul-su muttered that he did not need to rely on anyone else, since other party members would only drag him down. He confidently estimated that clearing this simple dungeon would take less than 30 minutes when suddenly the loud blacksmith shouted to ask why the idiot was standing there. The startled young man quickly turned around to figure out why the old man was so tense while keeping his cool. The grumpy blacksmith ordered him to fetch the hammer immediately, and the system warned that if the quest giver died, the task would instantly fail. Chul-su was stunned by the fact that he had to drag along a level 13 NPC who clearly could not help him at all. The annoying old man kept grumbling, but Chul-su decided to ignore the minor monsters and rush straight to the boss, relying on his high speed. The clever fighter rushed forward without warning, leaving the loud blacksmith far behind. Just seconds later, a sudden system notification popped up, warning him that Humphrey was already under attack by monsters. The alert shocked our hero, who froze on the spot, thinking he must have misunderstood the system message. But no, the monsters had indeed targeted the noisy old man, who was now desperately struggling to fend them off. Terrified and panicked, Chul-su braced himself and called out to his summoned goblin. Placing all his hope on the little guy, the big-eared summon did not hesitate and dashed forward to protect his master, fully confident in his strength. With a single blow, the long-nosed troll he absolutely shreds the predators before they even realize what hit them. Thick green slime splatters heavily across the cold ground. Broken rat claws and a shattered blacksmith hammer lie completely scattered across the cavern floor. The smug bearded blacksmith proudly boasts that these beasts are nothing. Meanwhile, Chul-su stands there, quietly grinding his teeth together in absolute boiling rage. Suddenly, the beefy warrior tenses up and begins scanning the dark corners for immediate danger. Something is off. He screams about an ambush and immediately bolts in the opposite direction. Watching him flee like a coward, our main character seriously considers just ending him right here. He wanted to order his summon to guard the idiot while he went ahead. But honestly, leaving this fool with a brainless undead means certain death. Instead, he commands his colossal troll summon to wipe out every single hostile monster in sight. No other choice. Humphrey growls about his stolen hammer. Apparently, these aggressive pests did not just invade Phoenix Elbasar, they stole his favorite tools. The angry blacksmith charges forward, but his summoned goblin beats him to it. His loyal summon tears them to pieces instantly. Swarms of giant rats crumble entirely to dust before Humphrey can swing his fists. The clueless blacksmith actually believes he cleared the whole room single-handedly. He proudly boasts about finally showing his true, long-hidden strength, completely ignoring his narrow loss. Kim smiles to himself, realizing that while this babysitting takes longer, it provides much better insurance. Having an extra shield around is a solid backup plan for now. Meanwhile, Humphrey is furious that the remaining monsters are completely ignoring him. But Kim quickly steps in and warns the big guy that is not the case at all. Suddenly, the big guy lets out a massive battle cry, screaming about his warrior past. Just ahead, a creepy skeleton wearing a dusty golden crown sits perfectly still. Decades of heavy dust coat its ancient bones, but then the creepy creature begins to move. The ancient thing stirs, snapping its jaw wide with a horrific screech. Its hollow eyes flare a deep blood red as terrifying, ancient, sleeping spirits suddenly begin to awaken. Humphrey woke them up, proving he is a complete fool. They could have easily walked away, but now they are stuck in a completely pointless battle. Chul-su desperately hopes this is the last time he deals with this clown show. He has to summon his goblin again, who just stands there quietly tossing a stone. It stands completely ready, clenching a massive, jagged stone in its bony hand while waiting for the order. The creature carefully eyes the target, measuring the perfect distance to strike. With a sudden, violent twist of its entire torso, it unleashes the projectile with lethal intent. The broken cobblestone tears through the air at an absolutely lethal velocity. The oncoming skeletons crumble to dust instantly. Talk about massive power. 3 hours later, Kim realizes the real challenge here. It is not the monsters, it is babysitting this absolutely reckless blacksmith. He is just dead weight. Amid the chaos, a level-up notification chimes. He has reached level 37. But before he can enjoy the boost, the terrified blacksmith screams at him to run away. The blacksmith yells about a trap. Suddenly, bright yellow flashes light up the darkness. This blinding light is a terrible omen, followed by 3 golden arrows. These glowing, sharp projectiles fly at absolutely blinding speeds, easily capable of stealing anyone's life instantly. Shaking with fear, the brunette scrambled to hide behind the drooling goblin. The little creature just grinned, completely fearless, while Chul-su stood there utterly baffled. He couldn't figure out why this deadly trap suddenly triggered or what it was even for. It made no sense, but he was quickly jumping to conclusions. Meanwhile, the foul-mouthed Humphrey triumphantly pinned a skeleton's skull, but his strength was rapidly fading. A stray projectile had pierced the giant blacksmith right in the chest, leaving a horrific wound. Gasping in agony, the old man cursed his filthy enemies with a voice dripping in sheer pain. Chul-su stared in absolute shock, while the nearby boar succumbed to the lethal poison and collapsed. It was dead, furious, the heavily armed warrior suddenly charged ahead at a terrifying speed. He screamed at the top of his lungs, swearing he would destroy that undead monster all over again. That brainless monster ruined his plans, but watching nearby, someone else was waiting. A quiet gentleman wearing glasses watched the running youths flying heels from above. Adjusting his glasses, he murmured that his long search was finally over. He had finally tracked down Chul-su, the very target he had hunted for so long. Shortly after, the pissed-off warrior marched back into Humphrey's forge, and the giant blacksmith immediately. The cranky blacksmith scoffed at his gear, calling it absolute trash, but quickly grunted a thank you to the kid for recovering his beloved blacksmith hammer. Humphrey casually squeezed the goblin's head, making a bizarre face to intimidate the annoyed boy. Chul-su was completely caught off guard when the system suddenly alerted him. The quest was a success, and he could craft gear using his new materials. That grumpy blacksmith laughed, calling him a lunatic, and shrugged that the hammer was easy to find. He claimed it dropped from the very first rat he had smashed, without wasting time. Humphrey fired up the forge, lecturing that great gear only comes from a craftsman's intense sweat. After intense effort, he smelted a premium steel alloy and began hammering it into shape. Sparks flew as the muscle-bound giant insisted that true masterpieces require unmatched expertise. Only the absolute greatest smiths can breathe life into legendary weapons. Having returned from death, Chul-su internally noted that the master was talking a massive game. Yet the guy had not shed a single drop of sweat, which probably explained the low quality. Still, Chul-su knew this particular armor used rare drops from a hidden dungeon boss. This raid was no joke, and the materials were top tier, he felt. Incredibly thrilled to finally equip his very first rare-grade gear, instantly turning heads nearby. Onlookers gasped. The armor shone with a beautiful light blue steel luster. It possessed a unique, broken passive that granted a chance to trigger massive cataclysmic damage on impact. Handing it over, the gray-haired Humphrey grunted that he would waive the fee this time. He warned the boy not to get overly emotional, though Chul-su had no such intention. No chance, but watch out, a sudden player kill alert suddenly blared. A violent shockwave slammed into Chul-su, completely throwing him off balance. An assassin in a sharp black suit lunged from the shadows to strike him down. Fortunately, Chul-su's quick reflexes kicked in, allowing him to barely dodge the lethal blow. The cold assassin sneered, noting the kid was indeed strong enough to nearly kill their lady. Chul-su bragged about his high evasion, but then yelled out in utter confusion. He demanded to know who this crazy guy was and what woman he was even talking about. The man sneered, reminding him that he served in her very last squad. Yet here he was, shamelessly playing dumb, drawing a razor-sharp blade. The attacker screamed that a worthless scoundrel like him deserved to rot. He pretended he'd never heard of Catherine. Right then, a sudden realization hit him. He frantically searched his memories, trying to piece it all together. Finally, Kim realized who they meant, that very same sorceress. The one from the dungeon mine, right at the start of his journey. Yes, the exact same girl who had betrayed and abandoned him. Furious, Kim argued that she was the one who stabbed him first. He was the actual victim of that backstabbing, and he wanted it clear. But the quiet swordsman did not buy that victim act for a second. In fact, he had some pretty solid arguments to back his claim. While Kim was walking around perfectly fine, his mistress was stuck in a deep coma, unable to wake up. Talk about a massive reality check. Kim froze right in his tracks. His jaw dropped in utter shock. The mental toll would be bad. But he never expected the Jiger's curse to leave her a total vegetable. Confused and angry, Kim snapped that it was all the monster's fault. He insisted he did absolutely nothing wrong to the injured Catherine. The armed swordsman simply scoffed, refusing to believe a single word. He kept pinning the entire blame on Kim, creating a tense standoff. He lunged forward. Miss Lee's position was now in extreme danger. Her future as the sole heir to the massive Samian corporation was ruined. The swordsman's face twisted in pure shock as his heavy strike landed. His attack had dealt absolutely zero damage to the young man. And here comes the chill. Kim channels his goblin power, asking again. He coldly asked again about the true status of the chairman's daughter. They were talking about a massive global megacorporation. It was a massive company, legendary worldwide for making cars and high-tech microchips. Scoring a job there basically meant you were completely set for life. Yet the heir, Catherine Lee, was now lying unconscious in a hospital. All after she teamed up with Kim in that fateful, dangerous dungeon. The investigator asked if she was really mauled by a level 80 boss. Kim nervously laughed it off, trying to play down the whole incident. He claimed she was probably just traumatized by their sudden defeat. The man demanded to know how a low-ranking weakling like him survived. It was hard to believe that a level 40 elite got wrecked so easily. While a weakling third-rank kid like Kim walked out of there completely fine. Kim stubbornly insisted he barely made it out alive. He claimed he unlocked a hidden class at the very last second. Even with top-tier doctors treating her, her condition remained critical. Honestly, if she had been in Kim's shoes, she would be dead already. But the skeptical investigator doubted a simple class change solved everything. Sweat running down his neck, Kim asked if there was any hope left. If there was even a tiny chance that Catherine would ever wake up. The man sighed, admitting that even the absolute best healers were stumped. Nobody could find the cure, and they were completely out of options. The young man hated the idea of just waiting around for Catherine to wake up. He reasoned that since her injury happened in-game, her cure should be there too. This was the only logical way to restore her back to normal. Lost in thought, the man adjusted his glasses and agreed to the plan. Our hero recalled reading an online article about a comatose man who woke up. He had fallen into a deep coma, leaving his family completely hopeless. But then the Brother of Heaven miraculously brought him back. Kim grabbed his ally by the hand, asking seriously why they shouldn't grab this last desperate straw. Just to save Catherine. Hearing this, the other man stared in utter confusion. He stood there in silent bewilderment, making Kim feel incredibly tense. After all, he had been leading this protective bodyguard by the nose. It was a massive bluff, but played absolutely masterfully. Soon, a beautiful white-haired girl appeared right in front of him inside the game. Her expression looked incredibly sad, leaving Kim wondering if the chairman was desperate. Did he really force an unconscious girl to log in? He knew that if they discovered his massive lie, they would eliminate him to keep it quiet. If that happened, not even the virtual world could save him. Kim began circling the completely motionless Catherine, muttering that he had never seen anything like this. Even so, he felt a surge of hope, knowing he was her only shot. He was officially the only one trying to rescue the Sun-Moon successor. Nobody could ignore how hard our protagonist was working to protect Miss Catherine. He was clearly pushing his limits for Miss Catherine, gently tilting her. Chin deciding he had to say something before leaving her side for now. Making a ridiculous face, Kim whispered to the sleeping beauty to get ready. She needed to prepare herself mentally for the wild ride ahead. Then, he started giggling and praising his own genius while she stood like a statue. He realized he needed to bring the lady along, but had no idea how. She literally couldn't even walk. Luckily, a brilliant idea soon struck him. His trusted summon Goblin stood right beside him, tongue out and completely obedient. The creature was ready to follow any command without question. Seconds later, Catherine finally began to move. Kim muttered that his crazy plan actually worked. He figured dragging her would work, and the long-nosed summon stepped up. The creature tied a rope around Catherine's neck and pulled her forward. Amazingly, she didn't lag behind for even a single second. The bizarre sight completely horrified onlookers, but Kim remained focused on his task. He promised himself he would succeed, even after bringing her closest allies along. Her companions were absolutely stunned, unable to comprehend this crazy treatment. Who treats a loved one like a leash-trained pet? A stressed Kim realized. He was cornered, and history was about to repeat itself here. Suddenly, a gray-bearded old man materialized right next to the young man. This bald elder waved his hand urgently, muttering that time was running out. With no time to explain, our hero decided not to ask questions. Stepping into a quiet alleyway, Kim admitted he never expected to meet again. The old schemer chuckled, simply asking the boy to use his real name. His real name. Our daredevil straight up admits he does not trust him, demanding some quick answers. He wants to know what the Everton Guild is plotting. The old man replies. That last time was just a raid, which is rare for their faction. Just then the goblin starts sticking his tongue out and making bizarre noises. Chul-su asks if it is true that this old guy is an informant. He wants him to share the info, but Sin Ural hesitates, saying they must head elsewhere first to learn about the mysterious Farandel region. Slipping behind a hidden banner, the elderly gentleman tells them to follow closely. A warrior strikes him, hard, right across the head. Nursing fresh bruises, the cunning old man admits he actually knows very little. He explains that unlike Riva, the local boss rarely makes an appearance. He only shows up once a month and under very specific conditions. The old man senses the young warrior is starting to lose his patience. This dungeon run is taking far longer than he originally had planned. When asked why he is so angry, Kim grumbles about his money problems. He stays quiet about the bribes he takes, still lacking any real trust. The old man warns him that even if he wants a tough challenge, everything comes in due time since he just arrived in this town. Rumor has it there is a massive castle in Phoenix El Basari. That is where the main quests of this entire world are completed. Naturally elite, high-level players gather there all the time. Our stunned hero immediately remembers his main quests. He had completely pushed them out of his mind until this very second. He joyfully shouts that completing these will unlock high-tier zones. This sudden outburst makes Sin Ural's hair stand straight on end. The excited kid tells the goblin it is time to move fast. No time to waste. Suddenly, the young fighter shoves the old man. The old guy loses his footing and tumbles down, completely speechless in response. Meanwhile, the troll just smiles silently, spinning the rope around his finger. But suddenly, the dark-haired warrior stops, completely thrown off balance. His face pales as he looks around, wondering where Catherine went. You guessed it, Catherine has already been snatched by two shady strangers. They mockingly claim she will have way more fun with them instead. The guy with an ugly mustache keeps admiring her beautiful hair. He even suggests calling security to guard such a gorgeous prize. His buddy mutters she will be fine, while Chul-su grows incredibly tense. He knows if the unconscious girl gets hurt, she might actually die. Worse, he will take the blame. Just then, her protector calls. The stern man demands to see Catherine, but Chul-su is completely breathless. He frantically claims that they are busy with something important. He claims he will show her later, earning a crazy look. The private call abruptly cuts off, leaving the wealthy elite absolutely furious. He rages, calling Chul-su a worthless brat he never should have trusted. The elderly chairman calmly advises his colleague to leave the boy alone. Apologizing for the drama, Knight Kamun declares that Catherine is the true heir. The Semian organization, meaning no ordinary person could ever do anything to her. The brunette asked why he had trusted his daughter to a complete stranger. The chairman replied, knowing well that her medical treatment was entirely hopeless. He shocked his subordinate by admitting that even if things went wrong, in one rare case out of 100, nothing would change. Heaven's Gate was Catherine's only real choice, the only game where she felt truly free. The chairman believed this world was much better than staring at a hospital ceiling as the last thing she ever saw. While Kim and the Goblin searched for her, meanwhile our nervous hero wondered why this game had a stamina mechanic, of all things. Finding one beautiful girl in this massive village felt completely impossible. He thought deeply, putting the pieces of the puzzle together in his head. He realized that he had not actually done anything wrong in game. Yet somehow he managed to get 1 point and unlock a new skill. He eagerly opened the skill tab to study the detailed information. Healing a goblin that had not lost any blood seemed totally pointless. However, the next skill allowed him to throw his goblin assistant. That physical move sounded far more interesting and actually quite promising. Our bold player figured this trick would come in handy later. He summoned his faithful little green monster to test it right away. With his steel glove, the warrior grabbed the reckless troll by the head. Ready for launch, he narrowed his eyes and focused on the path ahead. Right target. He calculated the trajectory, twisting his body for a massive throw. Chul-su executed a perfect swing. He closely watched the flight as his slobbering monster soared away. The loyal beast was ready to obey, calmly waiting for a quick landing. Flying high with a great bird's-eye view, he showed no fear, only shading his eyes. Soon, the satisfied hero figured out exactly where Catherine Lee was hiding. Now he could finally relax a bit, sticking out his tongue. The creepy young man giggled insidiously, whispering that he was coming. He was coming personally for the charming lady, but 2 fighters stood ahead. They guarded the paralyzed girl, shamelessly staring at her beautiful face. The 2 scoundrels immediately recognized the idiot who was with her earlier. They laughed, assuring her that she would never get saved. Kim yelled. Angry, the warrior demanded to know who they were and what they wanted. A fight was inevitable. The guy with the ugly mustache cracked a joke. He claimed they were handsome heroes who loved rescuing damsels in distress. But Kim snapped, telling him to shut up. The thug called him a chatterbox. Both enemies rushed forward, unleashing a flurry of flash martial arts moves. This sudden display briefly confused Chul-su, but he stood frozen in place. He was already completely confident in his victory. Within seconds, his goblin dealt with both fools, forcing them to inhale a cloud of black dust. Laughing loudly, the proud warrior asked how it felt to lose to an idiot. They had underestimated him, but now they lay silent, giving no reply. A nearby guard clad in heavy iron armor hears the commotion and immediately snaps to alert. Act fast. Chul-su quickly binds the motionless Catherine Lee, pulling her behind him with a sturdy rope. The stern guard shouts with absolute fury, asking if this criminal really thinks he can escape after committing such a blatant crime. Chul-su calmly tries to explain that the others actually attacked him first, fully knowing the law. Enforcer will never believe his story. He decides to eliminate the guard. Before backup can show up, boom, the nimble goblin springs into action. Out of nowhere, Cineral appears and grabs Chul-su's shoulder, claiming he has been searching for him for ages, causing instant confusion. Cineral whispers a warning: killing a guard brings terrible consequences, so they need to work together. The cunning elder starts babbling about how hard the guard works for the town, while Kim asks what he is hiding behind his back. Cineral suddenly holds out a heavy bag of gold. The guard freezes, his eyes widen in shock. Instead, the guard grabs Cineral by the collar and drags him away, demanding to know how he dared bribe an honest enforcer. The elder receives an alert. His favorability plummeted, resulting in a recorded crime. Watching this, Chul-su realizes the eccentric old man is actually good since he just got arrested. Talk about a weird sacrifice. Young man complains that his main quest was supposed to be inside the castle, but the front gate is shut tight, locked. Stranger appears right behind him, saying those doors will not open anytime soon, prompting Chul-su to ask his identity. The man with an exclamation mark floating above his head introduces himself as Shin. Chul-su realizes he is a quest giver. Shin guesses that the boy is new in town. Given his desperate attempts to bang on the locked gates, he also admits he quite likes the spark of adventure in the kid's eyes, despite his vacant, vegetable-like stare. the blonde stranger declares he is choosing him. For a job, stating the young fighter will help him clear the lost ruins. Shin demands a test of strength, but Chul-su just freezes. Place staring back blankly. The quest requires him to retrieve a golem core. For Shin, and the measly reward is just 250 gold coins. Smiling, Chul-su calls him a brainless NPC. If it was a dangerous dungeon, he should have just said so. Next stop, the ruins. Ruins surrounded by boiling lava below and deadly spinning saw blades above. With his high-level skills, Chul-su could easily breeze past these traps. Except he must drag Catherine Lee along while keeping her completely safe. He decides to clear the path first, telling the goblin to follow close and keep a tight grip on Catherine Lee. The fearless fighter crouches low and readies his stance, pressing his fingertips firmly against the stone floor to unleash a massive burst of speed. He launches forward like a bullet, ignoring the terrifying hum of the blades. Total madness. Never letting his focus slip, pushing through, Chul-su calls out to the troll. He is counting on to survive this insane challenge. Right then, the long-eared summon leaps and glides directly over the boiling lava. Clutching the rope tightly in its hands, landing safely, it looks back at its master, signaling that the job was done without any real effort. Smiling calmly, Chul-su quietly praises his rally skill, which had brought the summon right to him. But in an instant, a cold realization suddenly hits the young man. Only the summon crossed over, leaving the helpless Catherine stranded on the far side. Panicking, Chul-su remembers that this skill only calls his goblin back. That is not going to save her. Right at that terrible second, the girl is just inches away from the boiling magma, and his anxiety spikes. She's going to fall and burn to ashes if he doesn't act immediately. Sweating bullets, the tense young man desperately screams at the goblin to do something, because otherwise she is going to meet a horrific end. With a sudden jerk, the summon yanks the rope, sending Catherine flying upward. But she is on a direct collision course with those spinning circular discs. Chul-su watches through his fingers, fully aware of how this nightmare could end. Finally, the girl, completely unconscious and limp, lands right at his feet. Still completely motionless, Chul-su frantically shakes her, shouting for her to wake up. Telling her she cannot die in a place like this, he begs her, pleading over and over, while deep in Catherine's fading consciousness, a memory stirs. Back when she was just a child, her stern father confronted her, immediately scolding her for staying out way too late with bad influences. He hated her makeup and her shortened skirt, making the young girl cry and beg for forgiveness, promising that she would never do it again. Sobbing, the innocent young Catherine kept desperately apologizing. But then she suddenly screamed out for her mother to help her. She yelled that her father was going to hurt her, begging her to intervene. But her mother just peeked from behind the door, cold and distant. Before quietly walking away, her father watched her coldly, stating that she was the absolute biggest stain on his life. Now, the girl still lies completely motionless, even if her brain is barely clinging to life. Terrified, Chul-su asks his goblin what to do next, then tells it to give her mouth to mouth. But then, the young man suddenly remembers that this is just a virtual game, and even with realistic touch, there is no actual need to breathe. She is already dead anyway. So he decides to at least make it look like he is trying to help. Thoughts of the Good Samaritan law pop up, and he desperately hopes that Catherine will wake up from the sheer shock of it, leaning in. To start, Chul-su is suddenly interrupted by a call from her protector, who demands an immediate update. Talk about terrible timing, right? The stern man threatens to end him, forcing Chul-su to quickly lie that she is perfectly safe. The butler explains he only logged in for work, but real-world doctors are monitoring her condition closely and will contact him if anything changes. Luckily, she is wearing incredibly rare gear, the White Spider Wizard dress, which is soft but as tough as steel. He realizes she was alive. The boss worried that even a single hair might fall from his beloved mistress, ordering her to be brought to him immediately. Right then, Kim suddenly swiped right across the digital screen. Instantly, the nervous lackey received a notification. Their call was over. He was clearly furious about getting cut off like that. A highly focused Kim asked the goblin if he heard everything. Deep in thought, our daredevil suddenly smirked, fully fired up. "Let us rush the boss room," he declared. The summon agreed completely. Suddenly, a massive boulder dropped right into their path. "Watch out, guys." One wrong move, and they would be flattened into total mincemeat. So our clever hero used the unconscious Catherine Lee as a literal bridge. She was completely passed out anyway. Up next, a broken bridge. His trusty-eared summon used a long rope to fling the poor girl high across the gap. With perfect skill, he tossed the sleeping beauty to safety. After that, the young master carefully balanced across the tight rope. Their final task together was to slay a massive stone golem without losing their cool. Once again, they used the girl. The giant beast warily watched them. But Kim had already mapped out a flawless plan of attack. He was pretty thrilled his improvised weapon actually worked so well. Using the girl as a bat against the boss, epic. But the plan shattered. Kim got mad when the monster dared attack. His absolute favorite tool for breaking dungeon traps. He ordered his summon to shred the boss. Meanwhile, Catherine lay motionless by the wall. Her fingers twitched, but Chul-su missed it. The brutal enemy kept throwing strikes meant for instant death. Instantly, a massive blast shook the room with terrifying force. The shockwave was insane, but our protagonist walked out unscathed. Through the blazing flames, his summon charged forward with absolute rage. The nimble beast leaped directly onto the stone giant's head. It delivered a brutal, agonizing blow that dealt massive damage. The summon landed smoothly on the ground, while the boss crashed down hard. The impact was so violent, it shattered the stone floor beneath them. Folding his arms, a relaxed Kim suggested they just take the core. An easy win, right, wrong. Suddenly, a magical restoration process began. The fallen monster began reconstructing itself, drawing rocks from everywhere. Rising from the rubble, the ruined golem entered its next phase. Phase 2 was active. Its level actually shot up, catching our cocky protagonist off guard. A nervous Kim ordered his summon to shred the beast. They had to act fast before the giant turned them both to ash. The summon darted wildly. He stayed light on his feet, avoiding every single heavy blow. Then came a massive hit, dealing over 1 million damage. Kim smiled. His summon was doing incredibly well this time. But they still could not afford to let their guard down. The process repeated itself, and the boss began to recover yet again, growing far stronger than before as he unlocked his massive third stage. A giant fist clenched right next to the furious Kim Chul-su, making him shake with anger. He summoned the Goblin again, commanding his minion to shield him from the heavy blows. Knowing that destroying the creature would only trigger an even bigger form, but then a whip lashed directly at the monster's head, making Kim Chul-su freak out even more. He desperately tried to keep his cool. Explosions rumbled like thunder, forcing the panicked young man to run for his absolute life before getting blown to tiny pieces. No mercy, the giant just kept smashing everything in sight, treating these uninvited guests as a personal insult, blind with absolute rage. The massive brute unleashed a flurry of deadly strikes, but the agile brunette barely dodged them. Kim Chul-su realized that this thing would just keep regenerating and growing stronger, unless he managed to rip out its core. Right then, a memory sparked in his mind, reminding him of the tales from the sly Cineral, who knew everything about these bosses. Where was its weakness? He desperately searched his mind, but realized that unlike the elites of the Eviden Guild, he had no way to easily pinpoint them. He didn't even want to bother, preferring to just kill the bastard. But left unchecked, the monster could reach level 100 and cause massive problems. Kim Chul-su, dripping with sweat, continued to rush forward like a complete madman, his rising panic preventing him from making any clear decision. Meanwhile, the totally motionless Catherine remained seated, not even grasping the terrifying horror currently unfolding. Right before her, suddenly, a massive stone hand materialized in front of her, ready to crush her cute face into absolute pulp. A dark shadow loomed over her, and Catherine's gaze finally shifted into a look of slight alarm, a truly massive change for her. Her quiet world was completely shattered in an instant, and it really seemed like the giant was about to grab her and crush her in his hand. After a few 10 seconds, she finally snapped out of it, feeling absolute horror. Her life was in danger, she just froze. She wanted to scream out and cry, but panic wouldn't help her escape this mess, since she was paralyzed in shock. Meanwhile, the giant had no intention of stopping, continuing to demolish everything in its way with endless rage, triggering a chain of violent explosions. Terribly stressed, Kim Chul-su realized that Catherine was finally starting to wake up. But she was sitting right in the danger zone and he couldn't reach her. At the Same time, he kept telling himself that her high level meant this damage wouldn't kill her, but it was still incredibly alarming. The stone monster was happily swinging its massive arms around. He had to stop it immediately. Under extreme stress, the young hero nearly shoved his entire fist into his mouth, while the goblin standing beside him looked weirdly cheerful. Suddenly, Catherine appeared right behind him with her staff in hand, demanding to know what on earth was going on. The completely startled fighter spun around, instantly realizing she had finally woken up, but at first, he truly couldn't believe it because of how sudden it was. Stunned, Catherine activated her escape skill and demanded a fast explanation. Feeling slightly overwhelmed, Kim double-checked to see if she was truly awake, secretly praying that she didn't remember any of the wild things he had done to her. But then Chul-su told himself that since the lady was safe and sound, she should really thank him instead of getting mad. Smiling, the pleased young man thought to himself that he saved the life of the heiress Catherine Semyon, surely earning a massive reward. The youngster immediately started bragging that when she passed out in the dungeon, he saved her. And because of his struggles, she got better, but this beauty was not even going to let him finish. She knew this was total nonsense. With a quick toss of her hair, she suddenly threw our clueless main character aside. He did not even have time to react. Clad in armor, Chul-su landed with a heavy crash and kicked up a massive cloud of dust, making him cough violently. Annoyed, the brunette yelled that she had utterly terrified him, asking why on earth she did not warn him before striking him in the face. Then he spotted a girl running nearby and realized she was desperately trying to save her own skin, tears streaming down her face while clutching her cane tightly. Catherine screamed in absolute terror, but there was nothing she could do. Suddenly, her loud scream caught the attention of the medical staff who were monitoring her condition. The shocked butler, just like the hospital staff, could not believe she had finally woken up after all this time. Honestly, he was completely furious, realizing that something absolutely terrible, awful must have happened in the game, and Chul-su was to blame for terrifying her. Remembering the boy's smug smirk during their call, the man wondered what the scoundrel did to Catherine. One medic suggested shutting down the virtual reality setup, but another argued she had barely woken up, so they could not waste this chance. The butler insisted that leaving the game during a dangerous dungeon raid was impossible because of the immense mental strain and pain. Looking incredibly serious, this determined gentleman decided to check everything himself once our hero clears the dungeon. Meanwhile, Chul-su received an urgent alert that the ruined golem was activating its stone rocket skill. The monster fired multiple projectiles every single second, and each one carried a devastating amount of power. Catherine kept running as fast as possible to escape, but the boss's massive fists were locked onto her. With a sudden lunge, the giant closed the distance, leaving the terrified girl completely paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, his quick goblin summon rushed to her aid, striking the enemy hard and blocking the incoming attack. Chul-su yelled out to her that with such slow speed, she would never escape her opponent. Hearing this, the poor girl completely froze and fell to her knees, staring in horror. She did not even have the strength to speak, only muttering under her breath that she was terrified and could not pull herself together to fight back. Panicking, Chul-su realized this was bad and had to do something quickly to help calm her down. He immediately called over his loyal goblin summon, who stood ready for his next command. The goblin just acted like a fool, sticking out his tongue. Chul-su decided to knock Catherine out cold immediately, knowing her constant whining would only get in his way. But suddenly, the crying girl began to whisper a quiet plea. Chul-su was completely baffled, unable to understand what she was asking. Looking up with trembling eyes, the helpless beauty stared straight at him. She begged for salvation, promising a massive reward. Hearing this, Chul-su smiled. He promised to get her out safe and sound, even as sweat dripped down his face. But the frantic girl suddenly cried out that he had it all wrong. Tears kept pouring from her eyes as she let out a desperate, angry scream. She screamed about how much she hated the Semyon group and their corrupt employees. She begged him to save her from her father, mother, and entire family. The shocking confession stunned Chul-su, but he quietly listened without jumping to conclusions. Clutching her head, the sobbing girl explained her miserable reality. She just wanted to escape the constant beatings. Right then, a stern butler stepped out, threatening to hunt down any thief who hid his lady. Chul-su quickly ordered his goblin to buy them some time to escape. The little monster immediately grabbed his wooden club to face the threat. Discouraged, Chul-su wondered what to do if the butler refused to trust them. But he forced a bright, fake smile onto Catherine's face using his fingers. With a creepy grin, he asked if mutual trust was not key in business. He smoothly assured the butler that the lady was perfectly fine. Yet deep down, Chul-su was completely baffled by how things were turning out. He was shocked that Catherine had recovered her senses so quickly. It seemed her dramatic collapse earlier was just a passing seizure. Adjusting his glasses, the butler apologized for misjudging the situation. He politely requested that the young summoner leave the dungeon immediately. This meant his escort duty was over, which left Chul-su extremely annoyed. And trust me, he was absolutely furious about it. Devastated, Chul-su complained that this stressful ordeal had aged him 10 years. He demanded that Catherine keep her promise and pay him even more gold. Wiping her tears, the girl made a shocking confession. She admitted she had lied, instantly sparking Chul-su's short temper. He warned her that if she refused to pay, he would spill everything. He would tell her butler she was awake and claim a reward instead. Desperate, Catherine offered to hand over her high-level legendary gear. She would give him her best equipment on one condition. Chul-su's eyes lit up as he asked how much gold it was worth. She smugly replied that the loot would make him rich. Can you blame him? He was about to become an instant billionaire. Without another word, Chul-su clapped his hands and ordered his goblin to get to work. The green monster froze in place, tongue flopping out. Suddenly, the giant golem, currently in its 5th stage, spotted them. A shocked Chul-su ordered his goblin subordinate to buy some time. He just needed to stall while Chul-su smashed the surroundings. But that silly plan allowed the golem to reach level 170. Panicking completely, Chul-su takes off running and screams they're all going to be turned to mush. If that monster hits them, but out of nowhere, someone casts exploding icicles. The spell freezes the massive giant solid. Chul-su looks back in shock and thinks they actually beat him. It turns out Catherine froze the boss, and she immediately starts shouting. She asks if that idiot is going to fight or just keep standing there. She warns him and his pet to run because the boss is waking up. Sure enough, the ice starts cracking right away, followed by a loud roar. The beast lets out a devastating roar that makes it clear no one is surviving this. The three of them sprint as fast as they can, trying not to panic. Up ahead, Chul-su spots a door and yells that they need to reach it. To get across, they end up using a tight, heavy rope once more. Once again, Catherine gets dragged into Chul-su's crazy plans without even knowing. She gets thrown violently to the side, a sharp pain shooting through her neck. Meanwhile, Chul-su and his troll companion just keep pushing forward without stopping. Hearing her screams, Chul-su glances back, but he cannot tell what is wrong. Chul-su hears her crying out, but cannot comprehend what is actually happening. The terrified girl begs for help as she gets pulled back. A massive golem is dragging her in, leaving Chul-su completely paralyzed with fear. She has landed right in the middle of the most dangerous spot possible. But this time is different. Our hero has absolutely no strength left. Fighting back his tears, the exhausted warrior tells himself he must save her. He desperately wants to save Catherine, but his body just will not move. He knows that if she takes a hit from a level 175 golem, he knows he cannot rescue her in time. So the coward chooses to run, ignoring Catherine's desperate screams behind him. He never looks back, leaving her totally behind. Her mother never protected her from her father, and Chul-su is no different. Collapsed on the cold ground, she slowly accepts that no one is coming. She closes her eyes, ready to embrace the dark ending waiting for her. But look at this, a massive slash suddenly tears the golem's hand. Deep wounds open up as shattered stone fragments explode into the air. Rocks fly in every direction. Out of the dust, a skilled swordsman charges forward to strike. This mysterious blonde man in a yellow cloak is her unexpected savior. He steps in right at the final second. Gritting his teeth, Chul-su instantly recognizes the powerful warrior. It is Shin, the friendly guy he crossed paths with back in town. Shin praises the kid for holding out so long and prepares to take over. But Shin realizes this golem has no core, making raw attacks useless. Blindly striking this beast will actually make it grow even stronger. In this game, losing triggers a special event where an NPC arrives. That helper will crush the monster, keeping the player safe from harm. Even getting hit by a level 50 enemy does zero actual damage here. Now the heroic swordsman Shin is ready to end this beast. Face the enraged golem, but Chul-su decided he would. Leave this fight entirely to Shin. Suddenly, the brave warrior rushed forward to attack, yelling that the giant would finally pay. Chul-su watched the clash in shock when suddenly a fireball came flying right at his back. The stunned protagonist froze as the blonde NPC was violently kicked backward like a soccer ball. It was pretty absurd that Shin kept yelling victorious taunts even though he was flat on the ground and totally beaten. Still refusing to quit, the fearless blonde charged right back in, leaping incredibly high, but the stone brute was waiting for him. The giant easily swatted away the lightweight's attack without taking any damage at all. Even after smashing his head, Shin kept rambling. And a highly anxious Chul-su noticed he was only level 70, meaning he was completely outmatched. The starting level of this golem was 40, meaning a standard player relying on brute force would fail against level 45 enemies. Even if Shin won, the beast would just keep leveling up endlessly. Normally, a high-level friendly NPC would arrive to save the day and wipe out the monster. This trick worked before because nobody ever pushed the giant to level 171st. But things are different now. A highly frustrated Chul-su realized that because the fight was stuck, Shin kept repeating his dialogue over and over. That's when the truth hit Chul-su: if the core isn't crushed, this monster will never die, and the swordsman has to finish it. Luckily, with Shin's arrival, the beast's vital core finally exposed itself, giving them a real shot at turning this whole fight around. Charging forward at insane speed, the stubborn fighter launched yet another strike. Refusing to back down, the analytical Chul-su knew right then that if they could locate the core, this brutal chaos would end. Laughing like a maniac, the overconfident warrior tried to boast again that he hadn't even broken a sweat yet. But get this, a massive stone fist was already flying at him. Out of nowhere, the goblin joined in, dealing some serious damage to the monster. Using his throwing skill, the clever Chul-su quickly realized that the helpful NPC was targeting the exact weak spot on the giant. Finally, the massive golem exploded into a shower of rubble, crashing down. Heavily, incredibly proud, Shin bragged that everyone would be dead without him, leaving a highly skeptical Chul-su to remind himself that he actually did the real work. Shin just shrugged, saying they were safe now anyway. But the utterly exhausted protagonist didn't feel safe at all. His eyes drifted over to Catherine Lee, who was slumped on the ground. After the crazy battle, she stood quietly amidst the thick dust clouds, staring blankly ahead without even a single cough. Soon, the entire group made their way back to the city in complete silence. A surprisingly solemn Shin remarked that surviving this zone proved their power. Yet Chul-su only felt a deep sense of dread, as if he had just stabbed Catherine in the back. The blonde fighter claimed he was close friends with the vice captain of the kingdom's knights, making the nervous brunette guy hoped that this chatterbox would actually help him. With a quick cheeky smile, the blonde waved goodbye, declaring his job masterfully done before casually walking away. Lost in his own thoughts, the quiet NPC kept moving, leaving the youths alone. Suddenly, a bright exclamation mark popped above his head, and Chul-su loudly called him a complete psycho. The frustrated young man stared at the bot in utter disbelief, while Catherine stood silently by, completely lost in her own thoughts. Chul-su clenched his fist inside his iron glove, trying to hold back a wave of anger. Snapping completely, he yelled that it was all his fault for believing she had finally woken up. Right then, Knight Kaiman appeared out of nowhere, marching right up to Catherine with a dead serious expression. Chul-su had absolutely no clue who this high-ranking guy was, but he knew better than to interfere, as it was way too risky. This was his first time seeing such high-tier armor on someone who dwarfed him in both build and sheer height. Shivering in fear, Catherine got goosebumps just looking at her father. That was when Chul-su realized the king himself had arrived. The powerful older man admitted he knew his daughter was awake the second she suffered that sudden seizure. He hoped she would grow out of these childish antics, yet she was still playing these incredibly annoying games. Smiling warmly, Chairman Kim Yoon thanked the young man for protecting his daughter. Glad that their wishes for her recovery had come true, he promised that his assistants would contact the young hero with his reward. Yet there was not a single hint of joy on Chul-su's frustrated face. He saw that Catherine's expression was tight with agony, though she kept quiet. Determined to save her this time, he took a deep breath and yelled for the wealthy man to stop. Both the surprised chairman and his daughter stared back in shock as Chul-su claimed he knew Kim Yoon's true identity. The brunette youth asked if he was indeed the famous chairman of the SAE Young Group, respected for his incredible generosity, kindness, and perfect manners. Catherine looked on in utter confusion, unable to fathom his point, as Chul-su directly asked her if her father was truly that kind of saint. He openly wondered why such a legendary figure carried such a dark and heavy facial expression. Raising his voice, Chul-su declared he would not let them just walk away. Suddenly grabbing Catherine's hand to pull her close, furious, he demanded to know why the cold old man was acting like this, but his eyes widened. When he realized he was clutching thin air, Catherine was already walking away. With her father completely silent, heavy-hearted, Chul-su wondered why he had assumed this powerful man would break his promises so easily. Was he truly that cowardly? Chul-su questioned if a sinner who did not deserve any forgiveness could ever become a true hero to someone. Deep down, he knew he was destined to just remain a low-level goblin who they will never succeed. One guard asks his buddy if he recognizes the legendary King of Knights. He cleared the Duke's great library as the crowd cheers. Everyone recognizes Chairman Kim Min, walking with a beautiful smiling woman. She waves back. Everyone wonders who this charming lady is beside him. But he casually lies and claims she is just a squad member he met by chance. Looking calm, he quietly warns Catherine to remember his status to these people. He has to protect his reputation in their eyes. If they discover he has a disgraceful daughter like her, everyone will start pointing fingers. Meanwhile, the ecstatic crowd presses in. They want to embrace their savior, while a gloomy Kim Chul-su just stares at the floor. The massive crowd surges past, completely ignoring the miserable young man in heavy armor. He bitterly reminds himself that Catherine is still the powerful chairman's daughter. She is royalty. No matter how rough her life is, she is still an aristocrat compared to him. He wonders why he should feel guilty and tries to calm himself down. At least he gets his reward, but then a sudden voice startles him. It is the treacherous Shinril, calling from behind underground bars. Our hero cannot understand how anyone could survive down there, trapped in a place that looks exactly like a sewer. The old crook confirms that is exactly what it is. Then the bearded rogue explains how he got captured by guards earlier, but managed to break free. Now he is hiding down here with a perfect view of the entire street. He points out that the chairman called the girl a mere squad member. Yet her injuries are far worse than anyone else's. Pouting, Kim Chul-su argues that in this game, pain is just an illusion with no real injuries remaining. But the old man claims he can clearly see bruises from a beating. He spotted dark marks all over the inside of the poor girl's thighs. This revelation hits our main character like a truck. He will not tolerate this. Nobody treats Catherine like that on his watch. He takes a deep breath. Our young warrior bellows at the top of his lungs, telling the king to stop. This is his chance to demand answers in front of the entire crowd. He boldly calls the legendary hero a worthless piece of trash. Talk about guts. The young man asks how they can kidnap someone in broad daylight. These rich elites apparently have absolutely no conscience at all. Unfazed by the loud accusations, Kim Min just smiles calmly. Claiming complete ignorance, he suggests the boy stop right there. Kim Chul-su sneers, asking if the chairman thinks he is above the law. Does money really buy total immunity? Then, he drops an absolute bombshell on everyone. This beautiful woman beside the chairman is actually his girlfriend, he yells. They have been deeply in love for a very long time, he adds. This fake news shocks Catherine, who gasps in horror. She screams in disbelief. Whispers break out in the crowd about a massive scandal. But others are skeptical, pointing out there is zero actual evidence of this. Besides, everyone knows how easily major corporations can manipulate the media. Completely calm, he replied that the young man had confused him with someone else. He added that he was in a rush to attend to important matters. The annoying Chul-su called him a kind but cunning snake who took a scantily clad girl into his squad. After hearing this, the crowd started having serious doubts. They did not understand why the King of Knights would bring a young beauty into the Dangerous dungeon, unshaken by the clear provocation Kim In felt. He should not even bother answering, preparing to just walk away on his own. Suddenly, a man wearing a sharp black suit arrived and instantly stole the spotlight. His booming voice echoed everywhere. It was the extremely talented butler, Semyon, also known as Patrick Siniel, who rushed thousands of kilometers. After hearing that Catherine had finally regained consciousness, showing deep respect, the gentleman took her hand and knelt right before her. Bowing low, he declared to the crowd that the future of their entire organization stood right here as the onlookers watched with nervous anticipation. The deeply stressed young woman had absolutely no clue what was happening, what to do or how to behave. Honestly, you can feel the tension rising. People began whispering that this girl was actually Han Kai-moon's secret daughter, calling her inheritance of the massive corporation an absolute sensation. It was clear the old chairman's time was up, and he just listened in silence. Barely holding back a smirk, Chul-su asked if the furious man wanted to admit his child was standing right there. The stern warrior replied that even if the old scoundrel admitted his guilt, he would still expose the truth about the young girl being beats. Glaring at the insolent punk, the gentleman called him a complete mongrel, asking how he dared to act so proud. The angry chairman finally snapped, stamping his foot heavily onto the ground. It was an obvious sign of trouble. Boiling with pure rage, Han Kai-moon roared at the crowd not to listen to this insolent boy. Covering his ears, Chul-su jokingly wondered where the old guy got such a booming voice. He then pointed out the old fake butler from the Samyeon group, calling him a fraud. The loudmouth did not spare Catherine either, claiming she was just some random stranger he had never seen before. Even though she was his daughter, he accused them of plotting together to blackmail him. The poor girl began to sob from the overwhelming noise. The stern Han Kai-moon announced to the crowd that he would not break, since he was the very face of their massive guild. The merciless warrior screamed at the top of his lungs that he would slaughter the three of them right here. To prove he had absolutely nothing to do with these rumors, he then began unleashing his massive blade. He entered a vicious combat stance, moving like a wild beast. Right then, a sequence of sudden explosions went off, sending thick black smoke high into the sky. Covering his ears, Chul-su grinned, thinking the timing was absolutely perfect. He did not feel even a shred of fear. As it turned out, this was the work of a small goblin in a knight helmet who did great but suddenly began running away from his master. Chul-su realized that if anyone finds out Chul-su is working with the man who attacked the chairman, he is completely finished. So after thinking fast, our clever hero uses his troll throwing skill to launch the monster far away to throw off all suspicion. Chul-su spots a bright star in the sky, and you have to love his acting here, as everyone stands completely stunned by this sudden monster that just took down the legendary king's knight with a single strike, then vanished into thin air. Once the chaos finally settles down, Chul-su walks over to Catherine, who is sitting helplessly on the dirt with her head down. He gently takes her by the hand, urging her to stand up and pull herself together. But she snaps back, screaming at him to let go, tears streaming down her face. She demands to know who he is, crying that he never wanted to save her. She wails that he does not care if she lives or dies, but Chul-su just grins, grabbing her chin with a firm grip. The daring fighter calmly says that it is up to him to abandon or protect her, while she keeps waiting for some fictional prince on a white horse. This young warrior warns her to open her eyes and look at reality, but tears keep falling from Catherine's eyes. Suddenly, her eyes widen in absolute terror as she realizes the horror of the scene and spots Han Kai-moon's body. The young man tells her that karma has finally struck down her abusive father, and now she has a golden chance to be free. He reminds her she is great at backstabbing, so she should try driving a blade into her father's chest. Laughing like a maniac, Chul-su points out that this is exactly what goblins do, though he usually keeps that little detail to himself. Now, using his best acting skills, Chul-su claims he took a closer look and realized she is not his girlfriend after all. Suddenly, he starts laughing out loud, lying that he forgot to turn off the gas at home, so he has to leave. Chul-su sprints away from the area, his feet flying as the crowd stares. That is when Patrick Sinu approaches the shaken woman, telling her that if she wants to speak, now is the time. Gentleman extends his hand to the lady, helping her stand up and find her Footing with a little more confidence, Catherine turns around to face the crowd that is eagerly waiting to hear her story. But the words do not come out right away. For the first few minutes, she just stands there with eyes closed, trying to find her voice. Looking back at the silent crowd, she knows she cannot just walk away without saying anything. Though completely exhausted and reluctant, the shocked girl begins to whisper, her lips slowly moving. Soon, the massive news spreads everywhere that Catherine was beaten by the two-faced chairman Han Kai-moon. She publicly reveals that she is the daughter of the king of Knights, exposing how he severely abused and tormented her since childhood while hiding her. Some suspect she is just lying about being his daughter, but undeniable proof lands on social media, erasing all doubts. This completely ruins the public image of Samyang Corporation. Their stock price plummeted and CEO Han Kai-moon suddenly fell ill. In reality, the monster is only he put on a show, rolling around in a wheelchair from then on. And plenty of folks actually fell for the act. That wrapped up the saga of Sweet Catherine Lee, where the righteous Kim Chul-su played a massive part. Slamming his fist on the table, the angry youth yelled. He fully expected the old boss to hire a hitman to take him out. But things went a completely different way. Butler Patrick pointed out that he needed to keep it down in the restaurant, but the kid just told him to speak normally. The butler explained that photos of the brawl had already gone viral, and if anything happened to our hero, the Semyon group would take the entire fall. The stone-faced man added that people would first suspect Shin Ryal, though he corrected himself, saying it would actually be Han Kai-moon. Whining, the kid lamented that he was stupid to pick a fight with such a massive corporation, especially since he is not even getting paid now. A perfectly calm Shin Ryal tried to reassure him that he did something far more valuable than cash, but the kid was not buying any of it. Not even a bit. Then the fighter asked where the old man got that skilled butler he requested him to track down in the first place. Sipping his hot tea, the man admitted he actually stole the fancy suit because he had zero options. Right then, a guard yanked him right out of the place by his collar, dragging him away before he could even finish his drink. A glowing system screen pops up right in front of him, catching him completely off guard. Talk about a surprise. The annoyed guy immediately recognized the butler, calling him a corporate puppet of Semyon, who nervously begged him to stop using that name. The man called to thank Kim Chul-su for protecting the young lady, which honestly caught him by surprise. He never imagined such a terrible thing could happen to her, and despite working for her for several years, he had been completely blind to it. The greedy mercenary did not care about the drama, demandingly asking if there was any reward for him and calling the chairman cheap. The butler replied he actually quit the company because he refused to serve a man who would treat his own daughter that horribly. Now word was spreading globally, and people everywhere were terrified that something awful might happen to the girl who exposed the giant conglomerate. To protect her, the butler helped her start streaming online, and she threw herself right into it. The glasses-wearing man even poured his entire severance package into building a proper streaming setup for her. Now, with millions watching this charming streamer, her sheer popularity keeps her completely safe from the shadows. The girl is not exactly thrilled, but she really has no other options. Still, Kim Chul-su can't wrap his head around how the chairman's daughter fits into this mess. The loyal butler is determined to give beautiful Catherine Lei absolutely everything she wants because she deserves the best. He points out that it is all thanks to the brave Kim Chul-su, offering a warm and sincere thank you. The awkward mercenary blushes deeply, sweat dripping down his face as he demands cold hard cash instead of cheap words. The butler replies he already sent a special package by mail, then abruptly hangs up on him. Chul-su muttered that he also knew how to hang up first, shifting his focus to the live broadcast. He stared at the host, who asked if the donors wanted her to dance for them, which immediately put the highly protective butler on high alert. Started dancing. Meanwhile, the young defender was quietly stressing over her entire future. Hoping things would somehow turn out fine, he felt pretty sure that even if Catherine never inherited that massive company, she would make one hell of a streamer. Meanwhile, Chul-su headed over to the local post office to ask the clerk Rachel if any packages had arrived. The pretty blonde promised to handle his mail with extra care. She mentioned there could be something incredibly valuable inside, the beauty said. She would fetch his delivery right away and quickly walked back to the lockers. With a deadpan look, the young lady picked up the highly dangerous, cursed artifact. She dryly asked if he genuinely took her for some simple delivery girl. He flatly agreed she was. In her hand, she tightly held a terrifying whip of bloody fire. A highly rare, exclusive flame weapon that could only be wielded by professional summoners. Using this cursed artifact triggers a completely random effect, driving the players. Summon beast completely insane. Soon, the fighter went back to see the smiling Shin. The constantly grinning NPC Shin, who announced that their next quest was purging a goblin village. Annoyed, Chul-su leaned in close, praying that he had somehow just misheard him. He summoned a massive troll with his skill, hoping for a different answer. He told the NPC to look closely at his summoned monster and repeat the quest details again. Nothing changed. The job was simple: wipe out the ugly monsters harassing locals. Grabbing his own goblin summoned by the head, Chul-su grumbled that they would have to fight their own fellow creatures, but he firmly believed they could easily handle it. Looking down at the heavily panting beast, Chul-su immediately noticed that the beast showed nothing but absolute contempt for this low-level task. Matthias's driver drove past with a heron instead of his horse. Holding the troll's hand, Chul-su, who was riding inside the bumpy carriage, suggested they talk. Carriage suggesting they quickly chat about his worries. The floppy-eared troll just turned away and yanked his hand right back. Clearly annoyed, our short-tempered hero snapped that if had not summoned him earlier, absolutely nobody would know they were working together. He was furious that the stubborn beast refused to listen to him. So he lost his temper completely and angrily shouted that he absolutely hated him back. He recalled a stranger saying one-sided relationships never last. Clenching his fists and gritting his teeth, Chul-su tried to keep calm. The goblin just burst out laughing, openly mocking his extremely furious master, who was already about to grab the monster by the nose and slap him right there, but things suddenly took a sharp turn, forcing our young hero to go on high alert. His pupils shrank as their carriage was suddenly ambushed by a wild troll. The beast looked furious, eager to destroy them. Panic-stricken, Chul-su ordered his summoned monster to eliminate the threat immediately. But the beast just lazily held his club. Meanwhile, the driver heard some pretty bizarre noises coming from the carriage. And slowed down to listen. The wild troll swung his massive wooden club but missed completely. He just froze, staring at the floor, even though a dangerous enemy was still lurking nearby. Suddenly, the ghoul took a heavy hit and came flying straight back. It sailed right toward the screaming brunette, with the heavy beast flying straight ahead. He took a direct hit to the face, stumbling but barely staying upright. The angry goblin immediately started biting his head and tearing at his hair. The beast was completely out of control, raging in a blind fury. The terrified young man tried desperately to push it away, but the monster clung tightly. Right in front of them stood another ghoul, a heavy wooden club resting on its shoulder. It was ready to fight. Chul-su was absolutely drenched in sweat. He panicked and screamed at his summon to block the incoming attack. Just then, someone pulled back the curtain of the nearby carriage. Sunlight flooded in as the stern driver Mages aimed his weapon. He demanded to know what was happening, while the panicked hero yelled for help. Monsters had ambushed them out of nowhere, and he desperately needed backup. This whole mess was clearly because of the goblin village located nearby. Mages told him to freeze so he wouldn't block his shot. Meanwhile, the giant red-crested bird kept dragging the carriage along. It looked completely annoyed. Suddenly, the young man screamed to shoot the target. He pointed at the troll blocking their path, and the driver heard him loud and clear. But the terrible shot nearly took off Chul-su's head instead, making him curse. The driver had terrible aim. Meanwhile, the annoying ghoul was still alive. It mocked them with its gross tongue, causing all kinds of trouble. Covered in dark blood, the young man actually began begging the goblin for mercy. It looked pathetic, but suddenly, the enemy stopped attacking. Talk about weird timing. This sudden pause completely shocked the young man on the ground. Unbelievably, the goblin started crying out in human language, begging for mercy. He claimed he only attacked because he thought his friend was in danger. Chul-su's jaw dropped when he realized these monsters could actually talk. A little later, the driver quietly resumed their journey down the path. Chul-su was still pretty annoyed as they rode along together. He realized that his summoner class let him understand these wild beasts. Behind them, the tied-up goblin was being dragged along the dirt road. He kept begging, but Chul-su wasn't about to forgive him anytime soon. The creature almost chewed his head off. Crying, the captive made a sudden promise. He tearfully promised to take them straight to his village and destroy everyone. Just then, the stern mages pulled the carriage to a sudden halt. They had finally arrived, and the young adventurer began scouting the area. Ahead lay the dangerous settlement, ruled by hostile ghouls and bandits. They loved tormenting innocents. Chul-su quickly stepped out of the wagon. He took a moment to stretch his sore legs after the long ride. He complained about walking, asking the driver if they really had to go on foot. Macias casually replied that he could drive further, but he was just too lazy. And just like that, the lazy driver turned the carriage around and took off. He left the completely stunned hero standing on the road. Now Chul-su knew he had to watch out for deadly traps ahead. The captured goblin panicked, convinced that Chul-su was using him as a test subject. This creature admitted he made a mistake by attacking first, but asked if anyone would just stand by while seeing their loved ones in danger, the warrior holding him by the ears stared down, then yanked him close as if about to whisper something. With a cold laugh, Chul-su announced that he didn't care about their morals, terrifying the goblin even more. The weeping monster cried out that humans always attack them and ruin their lives despite what Shin had promised. Our pensive hero realized he felt no hatred toward these goblins because he had never witnessed them do anything truly evil. Still, the young man was not planning to mourn his death until a female goblin with a small child appeared, recognizing her husband. Puzzled, Chul-su did not expect to meet the captive's family, whom the frantic wife called her dear. Terrified, the goblin screamed at Tina and Mason to forget him and run to save their lives. The ruthless hero snapped at him, ordering his summoned goblin to hurl a stone at them, which was incredibly low, sticking out its tongue. The ugly summon began tossing a chunk of cobblestone in its hand, placing intense psychological pressure on the peaceful goblins. Soon, the big-eared summon gripped the stone tightly in his hand, preparing to throw. This was something he was already a pro at. The terrified family froze in place, lost on where to run, while their protector was held captive by fear. Made them break out in a cold sweat from this ruthless player. They didn't even take a step, completely frozen in place. Then the cold-blooded Chul-su suddenly let go of the goblin's floppy ears and let him drop straight to the dirt, gritting his teeth with absolute resolve. The brave goblin scrambled forward to take the hit and protect his loved ones. He lunged ahead before the stone could hit his family, an act worthy of absolute respect. In the end, the brave goblin shielded them in time, and the stone slammed directly into him, horrifying his wife and son even more. In that instant, the protector lost his balance and collapsed to the ground, leaving Tina and Mason fearing he was dead. Our serious hero told them to stop crying and quietly promised that he wouldn't kill them. He reasoned that if some humans sacrificed their children for survival, he couldn't call a goblin who shields his family evil. The overjoyed family reunited and wrapped each other in a tight hug, sinking to their knees in a truly touching moment. After that, the grateful goblin warmly welcomed Chul-su to their hidden village, where ordinary hardworking monsters lived, but at the same time, the villagers glared at the unfamiliar human through clenched teeth, remembering how much pain humans caused. Our tense hero finally understood why these goblins were so wary of human visitors. Still, Chul-su kept a completely cool head as a massive crowd surrounded him, chanting that he was an ugly monster, even though he looked absolutely nothing like them. The saved goblin just smiled, admitting he was deeply worried at first. He climbed into the cart, completely stunned that people could actually look like that. On guard, Chul-su warned that this was getting annoying, outright threatening their lives. He could slaughter them all right here, but the friendly, big-eared monster simply spoke up. How could they let their guest leave without a drink, especially after causing him trouble? So they headed to a small, brightly lit hut to finally get some much-needed rest. Once inside, the host served up a bowl of highly toxic goblin soup. Chul-su looked at it with pure disgust, terrified that one bite would poison him. He definitely was not eating that. Meanwhile, the chaotic little goblins kept messing around while Chul-su tried to plan his next move. Right as he finally gathered the courage to try the food, one of the kids crashed right into his shoulder, splashing the scalding hot soup all over him. The food was insanely spicy, making his eyes and skin burn like absolute fire. He screamed out in pure agony, while the trolls around him burst into laughter. Furious, Chul-su barked at them to shut up, calling the host a complete idiot. Once things settled, the host asked how a human and a green-skinned monster ended up together. Wiping his face, a serious Chul-su made it clear they were not friends. He explained that he was simply the master, and this goblin was his subordinate. The host sighed, saying any goblin traveling with an adventurer was incredibly lucky. To them, that made him the most successful creature in their entire family. Everyone here envied him, since none of these villagers could ever escape this place. Chul-su realized these weaklings were stuck in this low-level dungeon forever. The troll's wife tried to calm him down, offering to bring out snacks. Chul-su asked why the host was so upset, noting the monster had a truly great wife. Even if he was just a goblin, he had someone who actually loved him. Chul-su sighed, admitting that despite being human, he did not have a single friend. Let alone a lover, he was just a pathetic guy who suspected everyone around him. Monster was honestly living a much better life than he was. Smiling warmly, Chul-su gave them a thumbs up to show his genuine respect. He told the goblins to hang in there, hoping they would find happiness. But right then the female troll crept up behind him, gripping a massive scythe. Underneath the table, their devious kid was already holding a sharp kitchen knife. Without breaking a sweat, Chul-su easily dodged the sudden, lethal blow. His dexterity stat was maxed out at 32 points after all. Confused, Chul-su asked what was wrong, since they were just chatting nicely. The sweating level 18 lady stayed completely silent, refusing to say a word. Her husband was just as rigid, trying to keep Chul-su distracted from the trap. He kept talking while the family silently prepped their tools for murder. As Chul-su noticed a cockroach crawling across the table, the family made their move. The chubby goblin kid aimed a sharp kitchen knife directly at his foot. But Chul-su's loyal summon spotted the boy and struck him from behind. This sudden retaliation absolutely terrified the father sitting right across from them. The second kid started sweating bullets when he saw his brother stop moving. Pure panic took over. Enraged, the level 8 ghoul rushed in to avenge him. He lunged forward with his knife, desperate to strike the young man down. But his clumsy attack did not even flinch the calm, analytical Chul-su. The cockroach flies by again, hitting the fool on the nose without him even noticing. Still, the alert guy feels it, wondering if someone just touched him. It was pretty strange, both boys were lying. Under the table, and Kim Chul-su mentions it is time to go since he is in a hurry. Despite enjoying his visit, the sweating hostess cannot believe how they ridiculously lost their chance to kill him. Her husband, sitting right next to her, is just as stunned, though they try to hide their shock. Forcing a smile, they tell the adventurer to stay safe on his way, and he notes to himself that goblins are actually good creatures. Completely calm, the young man heads toward the door, repeating that it is finally time for him to leave. Suddenly, a man appears in the room and, seeing the little ones on the floor, remarks that he figured they would be here. The red-haired swordsman smiles, looking straight into the eyes of the main character, claiming he just found another troll. The incredibly tense young man instantly looks away to see what is going on. James, who had fed Kim Chul-su dinner today, is lying on the ground covered in blood, no longer breathing. The shocked red-haired warrior realizes he is standing in front of a player, asking what he is doing in such a strange place. He figures the brave man also came to kill these scoundrels, adding that there are plenty more nearby. The killer asks if our main character will help him, but he stays quiet, lost in deep thought, barely holding back his fury. The angry warrior demands to know how the scoundrel dared touch his friends. Right then, our hero triggers his battle mode and orders his troll to crush the fool. The big-eared goblin immediately starts egging on his terrified kin, who completely panics and loses all his will to fight. Still, the beast charges at the calm, red-haired fighter, believing he can easily tear them apart. Finding the perfect opening, the calm swordsman delivers a heavy side kick, keeping the monster at bay. Crashing to the dirt, the goblin curses him, while Kim Chul-su grows furious at his useless monster. The angry guy screams at the top of his lungs that his ghoul was supposed to be attacking, but the monster just stood laughing. Meanwhile, the red-haired stranger notices the young man's odd behavior and demands to know what he is doing. He hates how the brunette calls these monsters his friends and even triggers battle mode, clenching his fist. In absolute rage, Kim Chul-su growls that the bastard attacked his friends. Without any reason, skipping all the talking, the furious young man throws a heavy punch to the face, yelling about his immense grief, but the fearless opponent blocks the strike just in time, realizing that words are completely useless here. A few seconds later, a massive explosion rocks the ground, completely erasing the hut. Talk about some crazy collateral damage. Meanwhile, the Warrior Zeros grumbles that he is annoyed by Menchel, who never controls his destructive power once he starts raging. Brunette Heben complains that this job is incredibly boring because everything happens in a single room, showing zero excitement. Suddenly, they spot a man who crashes headfirst into the dirt, surrounded by thick black smoke. The redhead asks. He begs them to stop this lunatic, yelling that the guy attacked him first. He even claimed goblins were his allies. The girl wonders if he really killed him. Her ally just laughs, claiming the idiot basically took himself out during their duel. He couldn't finish the boy off due to that heavy, expensive armor. He asks for backup while dealing with the remaining ghouls nearby. Meanwhile, the swollen young boy lies there, completely lost in the chaos. One of the warriors sneers at his pathetic state. He claims the kid looks just like a troll, the heartless Zeros suggest, ending him right now before he becomes a headache, then wiping out the monsters. Meanwhile, the red-haired executioner stalks back toward the terrified goblin family, muttering that he wants to wrap up this boring cleanup mission. With cold eyes, he swings his blade and viciously cuts down the innocent mother, Tina, leaving her bleeding on the floor. At the same time, the main character's ally just stands there laughing, completely useless to everyone. He stares at the bloody scene and keeps chuckling, showing zero empathy. He finds the brutality hilarious, utterly ignoring his dying ally. Even the brutal Menchel snaps, asking how he can laugh during this slaughter. He reminds him their people are dying, calling trolls disgusting, soulless beasts. These wretched creatures will do any shameful thing just to survive another day. The killer sneers that exterminating pests like them is exactly why quests exist. He declares it is time for them to die, but the large-eared creature suddenly twists his face into a terrifying expression, yet he keeps laughing. Right then, a massive blast tears through the wooden cabin. The whole place collapses in ruins. Heben instantly goes on high alert. He can't process the chaos. A panicked Zero barks at Minjun to focus. Meanwhile, Kim Chul-su bursts out laughing at how these idiots think this is easy. Calling this a boring cleanup is hilarious to him. The hyped-up girl looks around. The brave fighter orders them to charge in and eliminate whoever is left inside. The massive brawler is sweating bullets, unable to grasp the situation. He desperately prays that they will make it out of this alive. But look at that, the savage goblin actually overpowers the red-haired warrior and drags him across the dirt by his bright red locks. An angry brunette tries to flee, but the village's strongest goblin cuts her off. The beast sinks his sharp teeth deep into her leg to secure her. He raises his heavy club, ready to avenge his fallen family, the burly Zero jumps right into action, snatching up a wicked, sharp spear. He keeps shifting his weight to avoid becoming an easy target. The warrior dives headfirst into the fray without a second thought. Another thunderous explosion erupts, forcing the panicked Heben to leap away. The serious woman notes that the troll got hit straight in the face. But this wild clash is far from over. Her ally grins and teases her about complaining earlier about having no tough enemies to fight. Now she is actually shaking. She is stunned by the monster's power. Her allies tell her there is no reason to be afraid. They will not lose this fight, but suddenly Kim Chul-su makes his move. He was still standing nearby, laughing hysterically as if his opponents were a total joke. He wrapped his arm around the red-haired kid, who had completely lost consciousness in the real world, relentlessly mocking the fools who thought they were invincible. The angry brunette standing nearby snapped at him to shut up, calling him crazy, but that didn't stop the brave man. He easily figured out they only decided to hunt these ghouls under the pretense of a stress relief mission, hanging them on the wall just to show off. Serious Zeros warned his ally not to waste her breath, focusing instead on the long-eared goblin right in front of them. Meanwhile, the brave man wrote them off as idiots, knowing the troll was in no state to listen. Fuming with absolute rage, the angry warrior ordered his subordinate to slaughter these pests immediately to end the joke, but the big-nosed beast just stood there, staring blankly ahead like he had no idea what to do. His master desperately ordered him to strike his enemies harder, but The clueless ghoul just stuck out his tongue and scratched his head, dropping his weapon. A furious Kim could not understand why the beast refused to obey. He suggested just asking him nicely. Suddenly, the dark-haired youth charged forward, instantly drawing the complete attention of his utterly stunned opponents. Then the trickster dropped straight to his knees and slid forward on his knees with his stomach out, looking completely ridiculous. He practically begged his own subordinate for mercy, calling him the Great King. An emperor of goblins, the guy warned that if he did not start fighting their opponents immediately, he would ship him off to a monastery. Bowing to a troll was deeply shameful, but disobeying meant instant doom. Hearing this, the big-nosed monster began swelling with immense pride. Poor Chul-su felt utterly humiliated, but he had to swallow his pride and endure. The young man quickly promised he would never give him another order, even offering to cook a massive, delicious feast just for him. Watching this, Hayavanan noted the kid actually treated the ghoul as a friend. Suddenly, some loudmouths ordered him to clear the path, but the bully took massive, devastating damage before he even realized what hit him. The wary brunette gasped, unable to believe her ally was wiped out instantly. Wearing a smug grin, the hero whispered that his prayers had finally been answered. That was a real reason to celebrate. Meanwhile, the fighter got a system alert. The Goblin King was highly amused by their insults, earning him a valuable troll point. Glancing over at the terrified girl, our brave hero grinned slyly and told his partner it was showtime. Panicking, the helpless girl screamed for her knocked-out partner, but he was completely out cold. Nearby, her broken allies lay slumped against a heavily cracked wall she could barely wrap her head around. How this simple ghoul easily flattened their strongest fighter with a single blow. The red-haired Minchial was covered in deep cuts and bruises, staring blankly into space without even drawing a single breath. Hyanae stared at her broken team, wondering why this low-level quest had such a deadly trap, realizing they were completely outmatched and had to run. She decided to head back to the village and meet her teammates once they respawned. Grinning, Kim also wondered if these absolute fools came all this way just to die, and were now desperately scrambling to run away. Suddenly, the hero's nimble sidekick lunged forward and grabbed the girl's leg, causing her agonizing pain. The poor girl tripped and face-planted hard into the dirt, barely holding onto consciousness. And stayed awake, spreading his arms wide, the warrior declared that the days of monsters suffering just because they were trolls were finally over. There would be no more quests ordering humans to hunt down harmless goblins, and they would never have to hide in damp, stuffy caves again. The crazy warrior called himself their savior, telling the beasts not to fear. Because he had come to this holy sanctuary just for them, he yelled at his lungs that humans were absolute traitors, who stabbed them in the back and left them zero chance of survival. The cold-blooded Kim gave these green creatures full permission to slaughter their enemies because they truly deserved it. Next, he ordered them to summon every ghoul living in the village. Honestly, anyone in her shoes would be absolutely panicking right now. The warrior proudly declared this was the start of their counterattack. A massive, terrifying crowd of monsters closed in on the helpless girl. Meanwhile, in the city of Phoenix, two clueless guards stood around making up stupid rhymes. Suddenly, one of the sentries squinted hard into the distance ahead. He spotted something extremely bizarre moving out there, way out on the horizon. The guards noticed a massive, blurry crowd approaching, unsure of what it was. As it turned out, an army of trolls had found courage under their new crazy leader and decided to launch an assault on the town. The panicked guard hoped he was just seeing things, but this nightmare was very real. Countless slobbering beasts glared ahead with pure bloodlust, ready to slaughter every human to satisfy their deep revenge. They carried Kim also, who ordered the goblin lords to listen up carefully. Before the bloodshed started, he proudly declared that today this city would be burned to the ground. 3 hours earlier, the guy gave a fiery speech, telling the monsters they would conquer their enemies. But the leader ordered them not to touch heaven, telling them to leave her to him as he slowly stepped toward her. He explained that if she died, she would simply respawn back at the village and they could not let her escape after slaughtering their comrades. He pointed out that one of her teammates was already dead, and the other was unconscious in reality, making resurrection impossible. The ruthless Kim knew the girl did not want to experience that pain. She clenched her fists in pure frustration. The cunning guy smirked, mentioning that she had a rather attractive body. That could actually be very useful to him right now. He suddenly demanded to use her as a mount. Yes, you heard that right, which completely caught the poor girl off guard. Terrified and shocked, she bolted. Carrying the proud Commander Chul-su on her shoulders, she heads straight for Phoenix. He warns the poor girl that her money and weapons are in his hands. Forget leaving the game, she must abandon any foolish plans of quitting. Heaven, on the verge of tears, begs him to just return her personal belongings once everything is over, and the young man promises he will. Inside the city, chaos erupts. A panicking citizen screams that a massive goblin invasion has begun, calling out for help from the local adventurers. Meanwhile, the guild members remain completely calm. They do not bother to move because they are incredibly lazy. The burly man in demon armor dismisses the old man's warnings as total nonsense. Right next to him, the small, bespectacled man laughs. Ghouls are just weak mobs anyway. The agitated gentleman swears he is telling the truth, desperately adding that countless hordes of trolls have invaded the city. A faction member asks if the city guards cannot handle them, while the lady elf at the table starts considering it. The lady in the blue robe warns that if they intervene without a very good reason, the next dungeon schedule will be ruined. The blonde man next to her notes her icy tone. He asks if he could defend himself if needed. Suddenly, a hideous goblin crashes right through the glass window, sharp hatchet in hand, ready to massacre everyone in its path. But at that exact moment, a calm fighter quickly reacts to the sudden danger. Aiming a gun straight at its head, the blonde-haired man smiles, emphasizing that ghouls have indeed paid them a visit, but he shows zero fear. The fighter in demonic armor admits he first thought this was a stupid joke, but it turned out to be something else entirely. Seconds later, every single window the room shatters. A massive horde of bloodthirsty monsters pours right inside. Through, armed with crude weapons, they rush to attack, but the massive giant is not going to hold back. Unleashing his powerful fiery ability, he begins slashing through the monster horde with cutting flames, showing absolutely zero compassion toward them. The master of the new Flame Guild admits that he expected this kind of raid, but unless there are at least 100 monsters, it is hard for him to have any fun. Deputy Leader Professor German angrily shouts that there are far fewer than 100 enemy creatures here. Activating his scanning skill, he realizes that tens of thousands of ghouls have attacked the city. This fact is highly alarming. The slobbering trolls continue to flood inside in massive droves to capture territory. Completely fearless about giving up their lives, the nervous Flame Knight screams, demanding to know what this overwhelming army is, but receives no real answer. The guild members are literally drowning in the wave of advancing monsters, completely panicking. The blonde man holding a pistol in his hands knows the city is in danger, yet he remains incredibly calm. The leader of the Armstrong faction, Horace Philibert, asks if his ally is going to tell him to just stand aside and watch. Deputy Charlotte Stone, who has the alchemist class, replies that those are exactly her thoughts. He had no intention of listening to their plans. Meanwhile, the summoner calmly points out that unlike the ones she saw before, these goblins are not cute at all. She whispers that it is time for her and Michelle to join the fight, avoiding any wasted time. Seconds later, a massive white cat suddenly appears on scene, letting out a deafening screech that stuns the enemy. An incredibly angry Kim Chul-su roars that he will make an example out of these wounded human freaks for the rest of his enemies. Meanwhile, fearless goblins keep raiding the city, scattering the panicked citizens. Two of the monsters even manage to corner a fleeing, tearful girl who hysterically begs them to stay back. Just then, the sorceress Giselle steps up to cast a quick spell, blasting the beast into oblivion with a single magic strike. She is actually surprised they are this weak. The mage realizes they only win by sheer numbers, while her teammate points out that these long-eared creatures are normally just low-level mobs. Sensing their strategy is busted, the cowardly creatures start to pull back. Looking pretty shaken up, now the city defenders press their advantage, unleashing a barrage of massive fireballs straight into the monster horde. With zero mercy left, the raging explosions quickly spark a massive fire that burns through crowds of trolls, hyped up by the victory. One of the defenders yells that these weak ghouls must only be level 20, calling to wipe them out completely. Sensing the shift, Kim Chul-su realizes the humans are pushing back hard. He needs a plan. And he needs it now. Right then, he does something unexpected, dropping to his knees before the great Goblin chief. He pleads, telling him their troops are suffering and morale has hit absolute rock bottom. Desperate, he begs the giant beast to unleash its overwhelming power and turn the tide of this brutal clash. This pathetic display deeply confuses Ha Yunen, who is currently carrying him, making her seriously consider just quitting the game. But Kim keeps begging the troll boss to fight alongside him, earning a wide, creepy grin of approval. The beast hands him a heavy wooden club, perfect for smashing through anyone in their way. Nearby, massive blasts keep rocking the battlefield. Much to the delight of the defending archers, one bald defender laughs, saying that slaughtering these weak mobs is actually pretty fun, but he gets careless, completely missing the giant monster charging straight for him. Panic sets in, and he can only raise his hands in horror. Talk about a total disaster. With one brutal swing, the giant goblin easily blows away the defenses, sending 3 archers flying in opposite directions. The blood-drenched monster lands heavily, staring them down while hungrily licking its lips. Now the archers lie helplessly in growing pools of blood, their shocked eyes completely frozen in terror. Laughing like a total maniac, the main character yells that this is what happens when you underestimate goblins, deeply worrying Ha Yunen. Inspired by the sudden victory, the goblin horde surges forward to exact payback on the humans. They circle around their dying opponents, mocking them and staring coldly into their fading eyes. With absolutely zero mercy, the monsters relentlessly beat the wounded survivors. The enemies beat them with clubs and fists, while their leader called for restraint, saying to go target others since these players were already finished. But the bloodthirsty monsters completely ignored his warnings and kept having their sick, twisted fun, being incredibly cruel to their victims. Still smiling, Chul-su asked them once more to stop and keep moving forward, but the vicious beasts ignored him entirely, grabbing Gispelli by her hair to drag her toward a dark corner. Chul-su's angry ally jumped right off his shoulders, realizing he had to have a very serious talk with his allies. Grabbing one of the beasts by the collar, Chul-su yelled, asking if those fools were going to let the girl go, but the crazed ghoul simply opened his massive mouth and burst out laughing, looking completely unhinged. Suddenly, the vile beast sank its teeth into Chul-su's hand. Luckily, he wore his heavy armored glove. Completely shaken, he yelled that these trolls were mad monsters whom he could no longer control. The fierce ghouls began pulling at the helpless girl's arms and hair in a complete brutal frenzy, while Chul-su screamed that they had completely lost it. Suddenly, a brave swordsman wearing a bright yellow robe and white pants dashed in to save her at full speed. At first, his wild, sweeping sword strike seemed to miss completely, leaving him standing several meters away from his confused enemies. But just a moment later, dark blood erupted from the severed trolls, spraying across the ground in arcs. Who wouldn't stare? Chul-su squinted through the mist to see this crazy daredevil. It turned out to be a stern non-player character, a real beast of a warrior, named Shin, who demanded to know how the ghouls traveled all this way. The warrior asked if Shin knew anything about Chul-su, but he lied, claiming he had absolutely no info. Shin was ready to fight to the bitter end, muttering that he just wanted to wrap this up quickly. He pointed out that while the players were holding their ground, there were simply too many enemies to keep this up much longer. Each individual hit might be minor, but human players are not iron robots. They will break eventually. The wise warrior warned that the longer this battle dragged on, the worse their odds would get. Preparing to charge forward, Shin insisted they finish this fight right now. But a hesitant Chul-su quickly tried to hold him back. He argued that the goblins were also reaching their absolute limit, making Shin pause. Chul-su pointed out that the quest was to kill harmless trolls, expressing his disgust for players who just blindly follow system orders. The angry youth blamed everyone who refused to look at the situation with their own eyes, treating these living mobs as mere trash. The blonde warrior scoffed, calling any attempt at communication a waste of time. He believed these creatures felt nothing but pure greed. An angry Chul-su snapped back, demanding to know how he could be so blind to them. These pointy-eared creatures were no different from humans, but Shin refused to buy into his sympathy, insisting that the monsters were only acting. To him, they were soulless ghouls born in the abyss, lacking families or children. insisting that every single thing they did was a trick to deceive players. Meanwhile, Shin admitted that he did not want to wipe out their entire species. They had a right to exist too, but the seasoned warrior had a warning. If troll numbers grew out of control, they would soon destroy the world. Their population had to be thinned out slowly to preserve the natural balance. To the veteran, this was absolute, indisputable truth. Grim Kim Kalso told him to cut the nonsense and face reality. He asked if Shin even cared about the innocent lives lost. Then, Shin dropped a bomb. Every bit of food from those creatures was highly poisoned. Panic set in as Kalso remembered what he had done. He had actually eaten that food, though the goblin soup seemed normal enough. There were no strange ingredients in it, but then another memory surfaced. He pictured a vile cockroach scurrying across the table in that monster house. Tina had tried to smash the bug with her massive scythe, but missed. When Kalso tried to strike the pest, his blow accidentally hit a hidden child. The bitter truth finally clicked. In this game, monsters do not have families. They do not give birth, they simply spawn and mimic human behavior. Talk about a brutal reality check. That happy monster family was a total lie. The ghouls had played him for an absolute fool. Shin watched him silently. Shin observed that the young warrior finally understood the grim reality of things. Furious, Kalso suddenly bolted, grinding his teeth in absolute rage. Nearby, Hebanin realized she had to escape while everyone was distracted. But before she could move, the relentless kid jumped right onto her. He perched on her shoulders with crossed arms, announcing a major shift in plans. Activating his trusty rally skill, he called out to summon his forces. His loyal troll appeared, forcing him to quickly pivot his entire combat strategy. Time to fight. Fuming with anger, Kalso roared at every creature within earshot to pay attention. He grabbed a nearby ghoul and hoisted the beast high into the air. Even though it looked like a frail old man, it was a monster. The young warrior yelled at the top of his lungs, introducing his strange captive. He declared this creature their true savior, ordering them all to bow down. He commanded the monsters to halt their brutal attacks on the helpless wounded. Yet the bloodthirsty trolls ignored his words, relentlessly beating their defenseless prey. Kalso watched in sheer horror as the violent scene unfolded before his eyes. The sheer brutality of the monsters was chilling to the bone. They simply refused to stop for anyone. Kalso could not comprehend such mindless cruelty, feeling his grip on them slip. His absolute control over his subordinates was completely gone, sparking panic. Desperate, he kept screaming for order, holding the old goblin aloft like a shield. He repeatedly claimed that this beast was their sacred, undisputed messiah. Nearby, a voice called out, demanding to know what he was doing with that beast. Kalso quickly stuttered out an explanation, claiming it was all a huge misunderstanding. He claimed he was just preparing a skill, but then his chains suddenly snapped. The three fell in a heap, the nearby fighter sighed, watching them tumble. He admitted he nearly mistook the kid for an ally of the rampaging monsters. The gentleman ordered him to go and wipe out the massive crowd of enemies, and the young man exhaled, realizing they had just barely avoided a total disaster. The brunette looked at his subordinate, who was clutching his head in pain after taking a nasty fall. The angry troll started jumping up and down and thrashing his arms, a clear sign that he wanted blood. The panic-stricken master begged him not to pull off a suplex now and just step back to avoid causing any more unnecessary trouble, but the predator did not listen, immediately grabbing a heavy cobblestone off the ground, but Kalso had absolutely no idea what he was planning. The angry, long-eared creature rushed off, with the massive stone gripped tight, while a nervous Kim blocked his path, desperately trying to calm him down. Suddenly, the boy grabbed the hand of a worried Heban, who had no idea what else to expect from him next. The raging monster hurled a jagged stone shard, but the scoundrel shielded the girl with his own body, though the sharp shard still sliced across her face. The bastard declared he would never forget her ultimate sacrifice, and the girl instantly lost consciousness. Her breathing stopped entirely, tossing the girl aside. The cold brunette barked, "How dare a servant attack him?" Then, calming down, he quietly muttered that cheap tricks would never work, keeping his hands calmly tucked behind his back. He confidently told the slightly confused, big-nosed fellow that he still had a lot to learn. At that exact moment, a strange object flew straight into the sky, noticed by the summoner standing right nearby. The lady with elf ears looked closer and realized that someone had literally just thrown a normal rock into the air. the lady sitting on the hill cast a cold, sharp gaze down to investigate the commotion. The very first thing she spotted was a floppy-eared goblin alongside a familiar boy she had run into before, though she had no clue why he was there. The lady grew deeply alarmed when she focused her gaze. Wait, is that a red whip behind the young fool's back? She wondered if he was actually stupid enough to use the cursed tools of the bloodworm without even cleansing them first, which could lead to disastrous consequences if anyone used such an item while the dangerous curse remained. They would trigger a random penalty, sending the summoned creature into a total frenzy. By now, the fierce warrior knew exactly what it meant to fight with that whip, choosing to completely abandon any mercy for his subordinates. Moving forward, just before the blow could land, a panicked girl leaped off a massive cat racing straight toward him. Meanwhile, not far away, massive explosions continued to rock the area as unstoppable fires raged out of control. Right then, the burning knight relished the brutal taste of death, thoroughly enjoying the slaughter of the goblins invading his homeland. A stressed-out Professor Yaman realized their stamina was quickly fading, with several members of the guild already severely wounded and bleeding out. Meanwhile, the ruthless knight snarled that losing to mere ghouls would mean they were utterly pathetic, and he was absolutely not about to let that kind of embarrassment happen. Meanwhile, the fearless Horace Philibert fired his dual pistols, keeping the oncoming enemies at a safe distance. The impossibly accurate sharpshooter easily blew holes right through the skulls of his foes with zero effort, showing off his sheer mastery. After a short while securing his 100th headshot, he raised his smoking weapons, letting them cool down a bit so the barrels do not warp. The blind marksman thought that was enough to halt their fire, but his ever-calm deputy warned him not to get ahead of himself. Charlotte noted 99 monsters were already dead, urging him not to take these trolls too lightly. Smiling, Horace insisted he would never doubt his vice-captain's elite skills, but playfully teased if she even knew how to count. Charlotte did not argue, she only pointed toward the tiny ghouls sneaking up right behind her partner. Without missing a single beat, the seasoned marksman sent a bullet straight into its forehead, stopping the beast from swinging its heavy club, spreading his arms wide. A very smug Filiberto dedicated that fresh fountain of blood to their beautiful companion. Nearby, the rest of the guild kept up the brutal fight against the relentless monster hordes, blocking them from moving any further. One hot-headed warrior shouted that they should just hunt down the entire pack. Instead of wasting precious time here, it was the fiery knight gripping his hilt, with both hands unleashing his blazing powers once more. Seeing him, the long-eared beasts grew absolutely furious. Yet they also felt deeply uneasy, hesitant to take another step. Suddenly, a goblin in the back dropped his club to the ground, his knees buckling under him. Slightly, the sharp-eyed Professor Jamin quickly realized that something bizarre was overtaking these trolls, though he could not quite make sense of it yet. Most of the monsters froze in pure dread, but right in the very center walked an odd-looking creature with completely different colored skin. This hideous beast split its mouth into a wild laugh, thick veins bulging across its long nose and bald scalp. Sensing extreme danger, Jamin turned to the guild leader and warned him that something was terribly wrong, but utilizing his flame knight moves, the reckless swordsman charged straight into the absolute center of danger, refusing to stand back and watch. It was incredibly striking how the fearless warrior unleashed a massive meteor explosion to obliterate everything in a giant radius. A brilliant orange pillar of fire erupted, visible from several kilometers away as it shot directly into the heavens. Moments later, deafening boom shook the earth, leaving total devastation in its wake. Raging fire consumed most of the ruins and spread fast, but this did not deter the brave warrior defending his territory. The proud leader roared that absolutely anyone who stood in his way, goblin, dragon, or beast, would simply die. But wait, a massive leg suddenly emerges from the roaring flames. Though it is impossible to tell what monster it belongs to, grinning confidently, the warrior prepared to slash down yet another mindless beast, which was exactly what he wanted. The massive troll did not care that his body was completely engulfed in raging flames, marching relentlessly toward his foe. Just then, the panicked summoner rushed to help Chul-su, who had made a massive mistake. The foolish dark-haired boy swung his cursed worm whip without even removing the heavy curse beforehand. The girl bolted toward him at top speed and leaped forward to stop the disaster, but she was too slow, and the thick Cord immediately brushed against the long nose of the completely oblivious goblin. Right then, a strange red growth, shaped like a leafless tree, began to appear. Burst out, looking completely eerie from the outside. The summoner cried out that she was too late, wondering how the idiot could do this. The trapped young man yelled in absolute panic, shouting that they had to move. He begged her to release him immediately, but his body collapsed into an unstable state, foaming at the mouth as his eyes rolled back. Nearby, the massive troll stood frozen, doing nothing but staring blankly at the floor, but that quiet stance was just a mask. In reality, the long-eared beast had lost its mind entirely and was now laughing like a psycho and threatening even its own master. The sharp-eyed summoner knew this mental state meant she lost all control of it. But she could easily handle a weakling like this. Moving quickly, she launched an attack only to gasp as the beast dodged with blinding speed. This was no ordinary low-level summon, meaning she had to stay extremely cautious. Unscratched, the fierce warrior woman leaped backward, boots scraping hard across the rough asphalt. She dropped to one knee, keeping her composure to plan her next strike. She knew the terrifying truth about a rampaging summon. In this state of pure madness, it would kill its own master. Right then, the wild beast lunged straight at Chul-su, who lay completely helpless on the dirt, but the giant cat, Michelle, leaped in to clamp her jaws around him, pulling him out of harm's way. The massive feline tossed the unconscious boy to the side, without a single thought for his landing. Thankfully, the quick-thinking summoner did not stand idly by and immediately used her skill to summon the bluebird, refusing to abandon the youngster. Meanwhile, the rabid goblin kept snarling, snapping wildly at anything that moved, completely consumed by its bloodlust. Seeing her chance, the summoner ordered Michelle to strike before the beast could recover. The massive cat tensed, ready to swat down the incoming threat. She unsheathed her claws with a ferocious glare, but in a split second, the crazed monster dealt nearly 1 million damage to the giant predator, leaving her whimpering in agony. Shocked by this power, the summoner stared in utter disbelief, her eyes widening in pure horror. The long-eared beast landed heavily on the stone, still hungry for more. Loving every second of the chaos, it kept moving. Desperate to tear something else apart, it had no intention of sparing the defenseless girl, charging straight at her with a sick, mocking grin. But the brave summoner refused to yield to this grotesque freak and decided to bring out her powerful Giga Summon to end this nightmare right now. Right on cue, the colossal earth elemental shook the entire battlefield. Catching the beast completely off guard, the frenzied monster leapt high, screaming in confusion as the ground crumbled below. The beast clenched its fist, channeling every ounce of its savage strength to end this. It lunged forward without hesitation, slamming into the solid rock with absolute confidence. He expected a clean smash. Instead, deep cracks webbed across the cobblestone. The stone was about to shatter. Meanwhile, the goblin tried desperately to swat the bluebird. Seeing this, the woman knew her calculations were correct. But she had to act fast. If she didn't cancel the summon now, innocent people would get caught in the crossfire. She ordered her bird, Romeo, to flee. While gripping Chul-su in his massive claws, the great beast shot upward, streaking across the sky and leaving the furious monster far behind on the ground. The enraged goblin pounded his fists violently against the hard earth, realizing he just lost his chance to crush the humans. Debris erupted everywhere, sending sharp stone fragments flying in all directions. He didn't care about the shrapnel. Blinded by pure fury, the beast screamed in absolute rage. Then he grabbed two heavy chunks of broken stone, squeezing them until they crumbled. His plan was unclear. This stubborn monster wasn't about to give up yet. He started hurling stones into the sky like a rapid-fire artillery piece. The giant bird dodged, keeping his focus despite the sudden onslaught. Watching the danger, the anxious summoner urged Romeo to fly even faster. The loyal beast heard his mistress and pushed past his limits. Down below on the ground, the relentless goblin refused to stop his deadly barrage. The crazy creature poured every ounce of his strength into each throw, completely determined to bring them down. To gain more power, the long-eared beast tossed a stone upward and slammed it forward with his heavy wooden club. He didn't even bother to aim. He just relied on sheer, terrifying instinct. But get this, his accuracy was actually terrifyingly spot on. The beautiful bluebird beat his wings as fast as possible, refusing to look back or get distracted by the incoming projectiles. Then a direct hit, Romeo took a brutal blow straight to the chest. The impact sent the unconscious Chul-su and the summoner plunging toward the earth. Blue feathers scattered in the wind. Our unconscious hero had no idea. He was falling to his doom. In sheer desperation, the woman reached out, hoping their next meeting wouldn't be quite so miserable. With one last effort, she stretched her hand as far as she could, refusing to let him fall alone. Her fingers locked onto his hand, a desperate lifeline in midair. She pulled his body close, wrapping her arms tightly around him to cushion the impact. A split second later, they slammed into the ground with a massive crash. Stone slabs shattered beneath their weight. Nearby, the crazed goblin grinned, holding his club and realizing he had successfully shot down his target. Dragging his massive club, the mindless beast slowly began to stagger forward. He had completely lost his sanity, driven only by primal bloodlust. Elsewhere in the burning city, a fiery knight faced his final enemy with a grin. An equally crazed monster stepped out from the flames, glaring right back at him. This beast wanted nothing more than to tear the knight apart. But clad in dark, demonic armor, the warrior had no intention of backing down. No more playing nice. This monster came to steal his territory, so he decided to use his eternal flame, turning it to absolute dust in a flash. Gemin panicked. The beast survived a meteor. Sinus screamed that this opponent was entirely different. No more games, it was time to fight. Stay back, the confident warrior refused to share the glory. Just watch, he believed that accepting any outside help would only ruin his pride. Gemin was a genius with an IQ of 160. Still, being forced to just watch was driving him crazy. The leader never let him help, even as a sword slashed the tough, resilient troll. Despite a sharp blade slashing right into it, the beast looked completely unfazed. Zero pain, it kept fighting. Then, seconds later, a devastating blast ripped through the city, lighting up the entire horizon. Massive pillars of dark smoke billowed, painting a terrifying scene. It turned out the savage ghoul had unleashed a massive amount of destruction. With a single strike, the beast blew their powerful leader far into the distance. The guild members panicked. Honestly, who could have seen their invincible leader falling like this? Defeated by a long-eared freak, a stunned Horus spoke up. He asked Charlotte if she saw that, and her wide eyes confirmed the nightmare. Gemin nearly fainted. He saw the unbelievable damage stats. Meanwhile, the drooling beast stood there, looking incredibly pleased. The professor warned that no regular player could survive such overwhelming agony. Anger took over. The genius screamed at their stubborn commander. No response. Suddenly, a hand reached down. The master patted the boy's head, admitting defeat in this brutal fight. He smiled, telling the crying boy to pull himself together. Gemin froze. How was this man still alive? He was completely baffled, struggling to comprehend this impossible survival. The hero chuckled, bringing up the clever strategy the boy had mentioned. It was time to play by the rules. He asked if there was a plan to beat a beast with one-shot power. Gemin pushed up his glasses. Running was the only logical option. When an opponent can kill you instantly, retreat is the only choice. Defeating this goblin 100% was simply impossible. But a single strike was still possible. Hearing this, the swordsman grinned. His fighting spirit flared. He locked eyes with the giant beast. Gathering his strength, the warrior made a bold declaration. He would destroy this crazed ghoul with that exact single blow, no hesitation. Fueled by absolute confidence, he lunged forward, unleashing his most devastating techniques. "Wait for my signal," the worried genius desperately screamed at him. But the knight completely ignored him, rushing forward blindly because they were running out of time. The beast had taken zero damage. It could easily wipe them all out. It was an absolute powerhouse that could end anyone with a single tap. They could not even scan its level. It was an absolute mystery. Only his eternal flame could bypass defenses to actually hurt the monster. With its defense completely down, the human actually had a chance. The ugly creature kept mockingly baring its fangs, ignoring the threat. But it was way too early to celebrate as the fight continued. Pushing off the ground with veiny hands, the beast circled around. Determined to avoid becoming an easy target, the fanged goblin charged. It swung the heavy club that had saved its life. Gemin watched, knowing this fight was absolute madness. But he knew the proud swordsman would never back down without revenge. The serious, bespectacled researcher realized that even if his teammate failed first, the stubborn warrior would simply keep trying. Right at that moment, the focused young man triggered his powerful professor skill, and a strange, mind-like device materialized on the ground. A metallic stem began to sprout from a stone, growing rapidly. Soon, linked metallic structures were securely deployed all around the entire perimeter. The brilliant scientist worked fast, setting up a defensive force field to establish his temporary laboratory. Next, he cast an immobilization spell that completely froze all enemies in range for 8 seconds. Deadly serious, Gemin announced that his ultimate trap was ready. Everything worked out flawlessly, and their critical setup was complete. The giant goblin instantly froze in midair, leaving it wide open. The swordsman lunged, believing this strike would finish the beast. He now fully respected his opponent's terrifying power. But by activating his berserker stance and last breath skill, he grinned, knowing he was far stronger than this mindless ghoul. Unwilling to hold back, the fearless warrior dealt a massive blow. He scored 500,000 damage points before the target could react. Yet even after that insane hit, the big-eared creature survived. Still gripping its weapon tightly, it remained a major threat. Sticking out its disgusting tongue, the beast began to mock them. It was just playing around instead of attacking. Highly tense, Gemin noticed that the beast had already moved after barely 2 seconds of freeze. He quickly cast spells to prevent the monster from attacking. The professor immediately activated his tactical reorganization ability, teleporting all nearby players to safety, which shocked the swordsman. The panicked scientist shouted that the level gap was simply too massive. Continuing this fight was suicide. The others panicked, asking why anyone would risk their life for a video game. They finally woke up, realizing the monster could easily wipe them out. Without wasting another second, the terrified players began logging out of the game. They had absolutely no desire to stay for a senseless slaughter. Laughing, Horace suggested they escape, and Charlotte agreed that it was his most sensible idea yet. As she vanished, she admitted she would have refused to fight anyway. But right before she could fully disappear, she suddenly froze. Her eyes widened in absolute shock as something completely unexpected happened. Not at all, the furious woman realized the young man had tricked her, deciding to stay and keep fighting while waving goodbye to her. Suddenly, the system announced that to reduce the massive load on the Heaven's Gate game server. After this launch, re-entry would be blocked for 10 minutes. Before fading away, a bitter Charlotte screamed that she would return to punish Horace. She desperately tried to say more, but ran out of time, with absolutely nothing left of her in the area. Meanwhile, the Flame Knight kept on smiling, entirely confident of his easy victory, tossing his giant sword. Over his shoulder, the arrogant warrior declared the goblin was on its last breath. Little Yaman begged him to stop right there. The hot-headed professor yelled that the monster's mobility could only be restored once, meaning their special setup could only be used once every minute. Suddenly, the startled warrior stared straight ahead, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding. The shocked guild leader spotted a massive cobblestone floating high up, looking extremely bizarre. Turns out, get this, that rock had been hurled by a clever troll who was still standing and remained an absolute nightmare. The hideous beast did not even think of backing down, continuing to overwhelm his desperate enemies, leaving them zero hope of survival. Suddenly, the calm sniper Horace leaped into the action, drawing his pistols and opening fire on the target. Caught completely off guard, the sword-wielding warrior froze right in his tracks, unable to believe what was unfolding before his eyes. The stern Knight of Flame had no time to react before Filbert started pressing his enemy with everything he had, scratching the back of his head. The shy blonde muttered that the big-eared monster seemed dangerous, so he decided to shoot it. He quickly apologized to his boss, who remarked that from the moment Yaman stepped into the fray, this clash had lost all its honor. With a smug grin, the burly fighter warned the blonde shooter not to get in his way, and the gunslinger had no intention of doing so. Keeping cool, he let his pistols cool off slightly, stating there was no use in wasting any time. In a flash, both warriors charged forward to strike the massive beast still standing in its spot. Leaping high into the air, the daring Horace opened fire on his target's back, but the giant monster barely felt a thing. Smiling calmly, the blonde gunman noted that this was getting totally ridiculous, but the beast completely ignored him. It was quite frustrating that the creature had not taken a single scratch. But the shooter had no intention of stopping. After all, the beast was getting more furious by the second, eager to crush the small fry in his path, yet he completely missed the demon-armored knight creeping up behind him to unleash a devastating flame strike. Striking from the blind spot, the ruthless fighter dealt 400,000 damage to the eared beast, which instantly collapsed to its knees. Next came a spectacularly massive explosion which Yaman watched in absolute awe, wondering how things had gotten to this point. He simply could not grasp why these warriors refused to yield when their chances of dying here far outweighed their odds of survival. Even from afar, the brunette spots that confident smirk on the guild master's face, showing he has no plan to stop. Horace Philibert remains just as calm, while the kid wonders why they do not fear death at all. Meanwhile, the troll screams in agony as intense flames engulf its massive body, proving just how professional these players really are. Gripping its club, the beast tries to charge while letting out a terrifying roar. Just then, the terrified Chul-su finally snaps back to reality and raises his own voice. First, the young man clutches his throbbing head, wondering what on earth just happened. Confusion washes over him as his pupils wildly dilate, looking incredibly uncomfortable with what he sees. He cannot quite understand what this strange, squishy green thing in his palm is, though it feels surprisingly nice to hold. But while he enjoys the texture, the summoner looks completely horrified because he is actually petting a goblin. The elven girl sighs, relieved that the hero is awake, calling him by the name she could never possibly forget. Startled, Chul-su looks up at the girl and her massive cat, who screams at him to stop pawing at the goblin's bald head. Crossing her arms, the woman demands that he cancel his summoning rite this instant. He needs to dismiss that creature immediately. The confused young man asks her why. Wondering what the big deal is, the furious woman snaps back, pointing out that the idiot did not even cure the bloodworm curse before fighting. She explains that while Chul-su slept, his summon went completely berserk and is now laying waste to everything. She asks if he even thinks about the sheer agony his poor summon is going through. Forced to attack others against its own will, unwilling to back down, the elf begs him to dismiss the creature right now. For his own safety and for everyone else, the exhausted young man mumbles that he does not know how. Honestly, she looks just as stunned as we are. She cannot understand his words, but Chul-su stands firm, yelling that he has no recall button, and that option never even existed for him. Not once. The shocked girl insists that is impossible, since all summons can be recalled. An annoyed Chul-su yells back, saying he wants this monster gone. More than anyone else, she looks at him, asking if he is simply worried about a beast getting hurt. He scoffs at her, asking why accidental harm is so bad compared to hurting people on purpose. The fierce warrior snaps at her to worry about her own safety, since his massive beast does not feel any physical or mental pain. He laughs maniacally right in her face, completely blind to the giant beam of fire charging up behind him. Sensing a sudden heat, he whips around and stares up at the sky. There he spots his summoned goblin getting absolutely blasted by the city's elite defenders. Suddenly, an invincible flaming knight crashes down, his glowing armor completely unscathed. The warrior demanded to know if the beast was hiding something, but got only silence. Keeping a close watch, he saw the nimble ghoul scramble in every direction. It desperately tried to avoid becoming an easy target in this brutal showdown. Shoving off the ground, the long-eared beast launched itself forward. It kept leaping, barely staying one step ahead of the merciless onslaught. Timing it perfectly, the long-nosed monster sprang off a wall toward its enemy. Rocketing forward like a missile, the guild master activated his eternal flame skill. He roared that this would be the final blow to the restless beast, but a red system warning suddenly flashed across his screen, revealing he lacked the necessary strength points. The shocked fighter stumbled backward in total disbelief, as he completely froze, completely paralyzed at the absolute worst possible moment. The smug troll reared back and swung a massive, deadly fist directly at the warrior's head to end his life once and for all. Believing it was over, the defeated knight dropped his sword, completely giving up. The bloodthirsty monster clamped its skeletal, bony fingers tightly onto his face, ready to crush the knight's skull as quickly as possible. Suddenly, Professor Gemin began trying to reorganize his team in order. To assist his paralyzed comrade, nearby the nervous brunette cried out, demanding to know what their champion, who usually rushed headfirst into battle, was doing. The boy wondered why the one who had sworn to crush the beast was now simply lowering his blade, punching the leaders. Metal Gauntlet, the desperate professor tried to snap him back to reality, urging him to fight to the very end. The boy screamed that their fiery knight had to be the champion he always was, but he still stood. Motionless, barely holding back tears, the boy cried that if their leader could not win again, then he should at least focus on staying alive. Weeping Yemen sobbed that they should run, asking what kind of fools would die just to clear a video game. At that moment, the knight finally woke up, though his eyes were still completely unfocused and his mind remained a total mess. Luckily, the large warrior grabbed the kid's face, reminding him of his earlier warning that shouting only leads to failure. Now, the stern warrior warned the archer that he was abandoning the fight, leaving them to their own fate, even the calm Horace agreed, muttering that this messy group was far more trouble than they were actually worth. A confused comrade stayed behind, listening closely to try and understand. Meanwhile, a lone human silhouette was visible far off on the horizon, collapsed face down on the ground as if fleeing for his very life. It was the terrified summoner Kim Chul-su, desperately fleeing a massive swarm of goblins. The panicked young man couldn't believe the invincible troll had just taken a massive 700,000 damage in a single strike. Knowing his nails raw, the player knew that if his ghoul perished, his journey would end, leaving him buried 300 meters back deep underground. The summoner decided to use his rally skill to call upon his loyal subordinate, which immediately caught the attention of the startled girl standing right behind him. She urged him to stop, warning that the madness effect might cause the beast to attack its own master, advising him to cleanse the debuff first using recall. It was their only option, and the brunette didn't think another path existed, while the lady pointed out the recent explosion, noting that out of everyone in the village, only the master of the new fire guild could pull off such a feat. Once the summoned beast's health drops to 0, the spell cancels itself, and right then, the madness effect is finally lifted. The worried warrior asked if he could bring back the troll if it died, but the lady promised him death was impossible. The creature would simply fall asleep and wake up again later, since spiritual entities like him had no concept of real death, remaining completely calm. The lady pointed out that Chul-su could not unsummon his goblin, and this situation was anything but ordinary. The hot-tempered guy asked if she seriously expected him to just trust her and risk his life, which visibly stung his companion. The impulsive youth shouted that he could not even picture living without his troll, claiming he would rather die than be separated from him. These raw words stunned the summoner, who never expected him to care so deeply. She immediately flashed back to the sweet memory of cradling the small and incredibly adorable Michelle in her arms, shaken by sudden anxiety. She wondered how things had ended up like this. She simply could not believe the troubled Kim cared enough about anyone to yell about it so fiercely. Unexpectedly, the caring girl gently took his hand to ease his panic, speaking softly with absolute sincerity about everything, keeping her composure. The ill-feared girl offered a humble apology to our main hero. The lady swore she would never let the young goblin he cherished so much die, promising to save him at all costs. The desperate, angry brunette cried out that if there was absolutely no other way, he would summon the troll right now. Time was running out. The lady realized something when Chul-su stopped treating the beast as a mere tool to summon and proved he saw it as a living creature with a real life. Right now, the crazed summon was behaving just like a wild animal abandoned to its fate. Suddenly, the woman realized the quickest way to win over baby was through simple, delicious food. Her strange suggestion threw off the young warrior, who highly doubted something so basic would actually help, but the summoner felt confident that Kim's pure sincerity would carry them through, even if he secretly wanted to punch the slippery little goblin. At that moment, our hero realized he had never once used the minion feeding skill to lure a summon back. He knew it. The frantic beast had bolted without even recognizing its master. Then sudden panic hit Chul-su. He realized he had completely forgotten to feed the poor starving creature that desperately needed nourishment. At that very moment, the stressed fighter activated his summon skill to give it a tasty treat. He hoped this would work. Honestly, there was simply no other way left. So without another word, the desperate brunette dashed forward to find him. He bolted ahead, muttering that the stubborn little brat had better wait up. Behind him, his confused allies yelled out, asking why he was summoning it. While holding food, suddenly a drooling troll charged right past them, catching a whiff of the food and chasing the young man down. The alert girl quickly locked her eyes on him, trying to analyze the chaotic situation. She came to some quick conclusions, pretty surprised to see a massive crowd of green-skinned monsters suddenly chasing Chul-su at absolute full speed. The young fighter kept running forward, his mind completely focused on his creature. But just a second later, he realized one of the big-eared beasts he did not even summon was keeping pace right beside him. The hungry mob was licking its slobbery jaws, clearly eager to find a quick bite. Chul-su quickly realized the greedy beast had its eye right on the fried sausage in his hand, but he was not about to share. He was holding onto a legendary item, a treat powerful enough to summon a runaway Goblin bride back. The stressed fighter picked up the pace and screamed for the ugly freaks to back off, but they completely ignored his warnings. It was getting pretty tough to break away from the massive swarming horde, but he simply refused to give up. There was no other choice. Nearby, a flame knight grew tense, wondering why on earth the ghouls had grouped up like this. Horus smiled as he prepared to exit, warning them that they were in massive trouble if they did not run right away. The stunned warrior stood completely frozen in panic, while Chul-su rushed straight toward him without warning. The powerful fighter reached out and snatched the confused young Gemini by his arm before he could even register the danger. He tossed the screaming boy out of harm's way, which looked rough but saved him. The brave archer Horus quietly bid his final farewells to the deputy guild leader and braced himself to hold the line. Right then, word of the professor's death broke, sending a massive wave of angry trolls straight toward him. In just moments, all that remained of Horus was a fading light as the hungry monsters surged right past. Sweating profusely from the intense pressure, our hero demanded to know how these insolent creatures dared to leave their spots without his direct permission. Up ahead, Chul-su spotted his sole subordinate, a completely crazed goblin. Prepared to offer the legendary treat to the creature, he told him to eat quickly. While they still had a window, the starved beast locked eyes on the delicious snack, taking cautious steps closer and closer toward his master. The tense Chul-su recognized this as the sheer effect of madness. Gritting his teeth, the sweating young man noticed the beast getting highly active. He coaxed his pet, calling him a good boy to draw him closer. Holding the delicious sausage right under the creature's nose, he prayed it would tame the beast and bring it back under control. Slowly, the monster stuck out its tongue, desperate to satisfy its hunger at last. It just wanted to calm down after the chaos. Ultimately, the monster placed its trust in the young player, taking a tiny nibble as thick saliva dripped down its chin. But out of nowhere, the rest of the green horde crashed the party, desperate to steal the prize for themselves. The poor crazed beast was completely swallowed up by the starving mob that cared nothing for him. The mindless swarm of monsters is chasing down a single legendary sausage, even though there is barely enough for one. These rude beasts ignore him completely. Attention to our main character, trampling him without a single thought. Talk about rude. It is highly insulting. The furious guy rants, calling them useless stomach-led pests. He tries holding back his sheer, burning rage as a brunette. He keeps calling them a greedy, selfish herd, finally admitting that Shin was absolutely correct about there being far too many of them, no longer able to control his anger. The warrior screams, ordering all these pests to die immediately. Just a few minutes later, the massive, chaotic pile of long-eared creatures actually forms a tower, still desperately fighting over that single fried sausage. Somehow, one greedy freak